Today in episode 61 of the podcast, we will be reviewing the film Last Breath and taking a look back at the Daredevil Netflix series. We'll also be giving the rundown of the top stories of the week, including James Gunn saying that they have their own Avengers Endgame plan for the DCU. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and this is We'll Bring the Popcorn.
As always, before we jump into the news this week, please don't forget to give us a like and subscription on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room, please give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And as always, please go to willbringthepopcorn.com where you'll have access to all of our archive footage as well as our merch store and other ways you can help support the podcast. As always, we can't thank you enough for your continued support.
Yeah, so we're going to start this week off with some sad news. We had three kind of big passings this week. I'm going to start off with Gene Hackman. He was found dead alongside his wife, Betsy, just the other day. He was 95. She was 64. They're actually looking potentially for some foul play because I think they said his pacemaker stopped on the 17th, and he was just found at the end of February. So that's just such a legendary actor. I mean, he won Oscars for Unforgiven and The French Connection, but you've got Wyatt Earp, The Firm, Quick and the Dead, just so much stuff that he was in that I'll fondly remember him for. But yeah, our thoughts and everything goes out to his friends and family for this tragedy. I mean, they said he was 95, but he was still in really good health, so they're not really sure kind of what happened here. They have done a few tests so far, but they're not really sure exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, he did lead a very long and very illustrious life. Like, he was in so many things over the years. Like you said, multi-time Oscar winner. He was in so many good movies and just a really incredible actor. One of my all-time favorite roles of his was something he would never in a million years get critical recognition for, is playing the coach in The Replacements. Mm-hmm. I know we talk about our love for sports movies and things like that, where he plays the coach in that film, and it's just like, oh, they got Gene Hackman in this film. Mm-hmm. How did he wind up here? But it's one of those, you talk about guilty pleasure movies and stuff. The Replacements is always going to be on that list for me. But yeah, him in that role, and just hearing all the crazy circumstances that have been around associated with his death potentially, it's just crazy to see. Imagine passing and nobody finding you for almost 2 weeks after you pass. That's crazy. He had nobody to check on him, or nobody was checking on him. That's insane to me. But it's going to be interesting to see what all comes out of it, what all happened. Like you said, there's talk that his pacemaker stopped 9 days before he was found, and he probably had a cardiac episode. Interested to see what happens with the wife in this case. Obviously, you have the unfortunate news about their dog as well, that probably, not to get too morbid, probably wasn't being looked after and taken care of, probably didn't have access to food, I would assume.
It just adds more so the dog and both of them gone, what exactly happened? They said the doors were unlocked, they tested for carbon monoxide, everything seemed to be okay there, but it definitely looks like something odd happened with them, which is, for anybody, whether they're a celebrity or not, that's just heartbreaking.
It's a terrible way to go. But yeah, our thoughts out to him and his family. And like I said, just a long, illustrious career, an incredible legacy he leaves behind as an actor. And, like I said, thoughts and prayers to the family and everyone affected that knew him and his wife. And, just an awful situation.
And we also got writer-producer Robert Orci, passed away at 51. He was a part of all the Michael Bay Transformers films. He worked on J.J. Abrams' Star Trek films. He also worked on Sleepy Hollow for Fox. He was part of the Amazing Spider-Man series. He had a hand in a lot of big stuff, and 51 is quite a young age to go. So again, our thoughts go out to his family and friends and everybody with him. He's a name that maybe not everybody knew, but he worked on some, regardless of what you feel about the Transformers movies, they have made a killing in theaters and are still going strong this long. So, yeah, our thoughts and everything go out to his family.
He's been a part of so many big time, big money, big commercially successful films. If you've probably seen it, he's had his hands in it in some way or another, as far as, like you said, Transformers, Spider-Man, some really big properties to be a part of. And 51 is just way too young for, somebody like that to meet your passing. And I want to, like, not to steal your thunder, I want to shine some light on the last person that also passed this week, who hits a little closer to home, because especially considering that it's someone our age that passed. But we had actress Michelle Trachtenberg also passed this week. And, you know, my first introduction to her was in Harriet the Spy. Obviously, that was her first real breakout role. Loved that movie as a kid. But she was in quite a few other things. She was in Buffy. She's just in a lot of really cool projects, and she's had some really unfortunate health issues.
And she just had a liver transplant.
Literally had a liver transplant, was finally looking to be potentially on the upswing from that again. And just ultimately just terrible timing. And, you know, 39, we talk about 51 being way too young. 39 is way, way too young. Like, she was born the year I was born. And, you know, that really hits home with me. But just somebody who, in our age group, that, you know, was very prominent and well-known, that passed. And it's just really unfortunate.
Yeah, and I got to say, do better, Internet. There's so many people who, in like her last Instagram post, because she was looking a little more run down and everything else, like she's clearly been having some health issues. She had the liver transplant. We don't know. You know, I don't think they're not doing an autopsy because of the religious beliefs and everything else, but it more likely looks like she passed due to complications of that liver transplant. But people online were just being absolutely disgusting. I mean, just saying this how bad she looked and talking about, oh, she's probably on drugs and she's on this and that. Like, just stop being such jerks. I mean, that happened with Black Panther, and when we were going through it, that when he was dying of cancer and not telling anybody about it, that everyone is looking and commenting, oh, he's too skinny. What's he doing? Like, what's wrong with him? Why is he doing that to his body? Well, he's dying of cancer. Like, it's just ridiculous how people can be online. So let's do better, people. I mean, this is a human being that passed away before she even hit 40. More than likely complications from a health issue, but like, if you don't know their lives, why go online and spread such ridiculous hate and everything else? Like, just because they're in the public eye doesn't mean they owe you anything. They don't owe you an explanation of anything. They don't owe you updates on their health or anything else. Like, stop being those type of people. Like, it's ridiculous to see the amount of hate and vitriol that was spent to her in her last few days. Like,
it's terrible. It's why I'm thankful we're, at least at this point, nowhere near any type of public eye. Like, I know we do this podcast and stuff, but, you know, I would love to be at the level of recognition of these people that we talk about, and, you know, of things like that. But also with just the negativity that comes with it, you know, it's hard. It's hard for these people to do. And kudos to anybody that, like, opens up and shares that, you know, part of their lives with people that, you know, if you let them in and your first instinct is to, you know, trash them or talk down about their appearance or do something like that, you're just, in my opinion, you're just like the worst type of people to exist. Like, do better. Yeah. Like, it's so unnecessary, so not cool. And I could spend this entire podcast talking about, like, cyberbullying and people being mean. I have friends who are, you know, kind of semi-well-known in things that they do online, and, you know, have, you know, a pretty decent following and a pretty decent presence in that space. And I hear them talking about, you know, just the absolute cruel things that people can say, not only on public things that you could share, but that even go beyond that to, like, direct message somebody and just send some of the most vile, disgusting, terrible things to people. And it's just, it's the worst part of the internet. We talk about how good the internet is for so many things. It is the absolute worst part of the internet. The people that try to make themselves feel better about doing and saying these things to people that, one, you don't know. You don't know there's anybody's situation. You don't know their day-to-day lives. They're publicly seen for whatever reason, but you're not with them 24/7. You don't know what they're about. You don't know what they're doing. And it's just the absolute worst part of the internet are these people that just feel like they have to go on and either say something negative about something or someone. It's just, I can't stand it. I could spend an entire episode on cyberbullying and talking about just how terrible it is. Just be cool, people. Like, just, it's really not that hard. Keep your thoughts to yourselves. You know what I mean? Like, this is given, you know, too much of a platform to people who, if they said this to somebody to their face, would probably get punched in the face. And then
they'll cry, like, oh, why'd you punch me?
Right.
Okay, that's, again, free speech means you can say what you want. It doesn't mean you're free of repercussions for saying a death threat or something ridiculous or harsh. Like, just be better people. And
I can't stand it. Just do better. Like I said, but I don't want to go on too long of a tangent about that. But like, it's just the worst. But at the end of the day, Michelle Trachtenberg, well known for a lot of the things that she was able to do, the projects that she was able to be a part of, and the world's a darker place without her in it.
Yeah, I don't say like Gossip Girl was one that she also did, but Eurotrip, because she was our age, and when she did that, that was a big for us through our teenage years, because that was kind of a breakout of our. She's no longer the little girl of Harriet the Spy. She's becoming a woman now and everything else, and a lot of people remember her from. Eurotrip not being the best movie, but remember that kind of as a coming of age for her. And and I do want to apologize when I said our Black Panther. I didn't even say Chadwick Boseman's name. Of
course.
But they were just ridiculous to him and ridiculous to Michelle. Like, their family and everybody's grieving, and they have to probably go through all these accounts and see all the crap that's being said about their son or daughter that just passed away, because no one knew Chadwick was fighting cancer and all the ridiculous stuff saying. Now, more than likely it's health related. We don't know. We're not digging into it or trying to get information. They need their time to grieve and go through with burying somebody. But if you don't know, why go attack somebody? Just please be better people online. It's just because you're behind a computer screen and you can be anonymous doesn't give you the right to be horrible people.
Right. And just do better. It's the one thing we could take away from that. Just do better and really think about things before you say something to somebody. But it's just, empathy is a skill, and not everybody has it. Not everybody can apply it, but time and place for things like that. But it's terrible. I don't want to delve on it too long, because I'll probably flip this table and punch a hole in the wall.
And we'll be talking about it a little bit here with our next news story, because this person has been receiving nothing but hate and death threats and stuff for many years.
Yeah. So let's transition into the news this week. Our first news story comes from Star Wars and Lucasfilm. There's been a lot of infighting at Lucasfilm, especially since the recent trilogy of movies that have come out, and how a lot of people have been responding very negatively. Imagine that. Like we always jokingly say, nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. But the woman at the top of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, who's been the president of Lucasfilm for quite a while now, there's plans for her to... It's come out that she may be resigning, but she's kind of disputed some of that. Like maybe she's taking a little bit of a step back. But there's a lot of infighting in Lucasfilm right now. But the plan is for her to step down as president of Lucasfilm by the end of this year. So now the rumor mill is going on about who's going to be the next person to take over at Lucasfilm. A lot of people are pushing for Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau to kind of take over that, since they're doing so well with The Mandalorian and everything attached to that. But there's so much infighting at Lucasfilm right now that it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, because it was kind of a crazy story, because it came out announced that she's retiring, and then she came out with a statement like, I'm not retiring. Like, we are talking about a succession plan and stuff for me, but I'm still going to be there to help them, and I'm still going to be around for a while. The biggest thing that surprised me with this is that she's 71. If you see this woman, she does not, good for her, she does not look 71 years old. But yeah, it does seem like, I guess, whether willingly or unwillingly, she's stepping back. Someone else is going to take over. It's been kind of interesting. There are some insiders who believe that Kevin Feige might be someone to step in. He's wanted to do a Star Wars film himself for a little while now. He's had a lot of harsh and feedback on what's been going on the Marvel side for a while. Even Rob Liefeld, who just parted ways with Marvel and has spilled everything out, believes he's calling for Kevin Feige to step down for Marvel, because it looks like Captain America, Brave New World isn't going to break even. The last, I think, 8 projects that Marvel has done hasn't been that well received, so he's calling for him to step down. Could it be something where he's kind of tired of dealing with all that, and he steps over, or take one extreme fandom to another, but leave from Marvel and go to Lucasfilm? I mean, he's staying with Disney, but he could potentially shift, and that could mean someone new in charge of Marvel as well. But it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But there are many insiders that think Kevin Feige does have a chance to become the new president of Lucasfilm.
Which is crazy. Like you said, you jump from one insane fandom to the next. But Kevin Feige, obviously, if you want to talk about somebody who, at the pinnacle of his success, was creating mega hit after mega hit after mega hit after mega hit for Marvel. Like, we talk about Marvel as the preeminent entertainment, entity right now because of the success of all the films that the MCU has had. And granted, his recent track record hasn't been the best. It's getting better. I know we enjoyed, Brave New World as it is. We've got two films coming up this year that are, in our opinions, both should be huge money makers for Marvel and kind of get them back on that upswing again. And it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out because they do have a bit of a roadmap laid out. Maybe Kevin Feige doesn't necessarily need to be over there to oversee all of that, maybe, but it'll be real interesting to see how these chess pieces move across the board because I couldn't tell you who would be the next person to step in for, the head of Marvel if Kevin Feige were to leave. Like, I don't know who that would be. Like, who could take that ship and keep it moving and maybe take it to heights it hasn't seen yet. But it's interesting.
Yeah, it could be a double-edged sword. You get someone new in there, and everyone, all the fandom that are not hating what's been happening the last couple of phases, like, oh, yeah, we got someone new, and then they run it into the ground. Like, you just really never know when you're doing something. Like Kathleen has had some misses with Star Wars. She's had some good. I mean, you want to flag her for you hate the new trilogy, but you love The Mandalorian,
right.
like.
Double-edged sword.
It's also the creative she has around her. You've moved Dave Filoni up. You've moved Jon Favreau up. But a lot of people talking about can Dave handle the pressure of being the president? Because he is a creative and he likes to be hands-on in there. It's going to mean more than likely he's going to be less hands-on if he moves up to be president. He's not going to be able to be directing and doing a lot of stuff as if he moves up to that way. But it's really going to be interesting to see what happens with both of them. Disney, Lucasfilm, Marvel are a kind of interesting place. The Disney, we have Snow White coming up, but it's been already panned and torn apart by everybody because of all the reshoots and all the changes and just the look of it and everything that's happened. The last few Disney films have done okay. I mean, Moana 2 quietly became a big hit. Like, it just quietly poured in a lot of money. You had Inside Out 2 ended up making a ton of money. So, Disney kind of had a little plateau. It looks like they're on the upswing. So now they're probably looking at, all right, Marvel, Lucasfilm, kind of what we can do. We know we have Avengers Doomsday coming up. I will say there's a bunch of leaks out there right now of concept art for Doomsday. If you don't want to have anything spoiled, don't go looking for anything Doomsday for a while until that goes down. But that leads some interesting stuff for that, but we've got 2 big Avengers films coming up. Could Feige decide to step away? But that would be 4 or 5 years from now before those 2 films are fully out and done, and that's not on the same timeline as Lucasfilm. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens between both of these companies if Feige does stay around for a while, if he does step back and allow someone else to come in and take over. And, Kathleen, with her message, was like, it could be a year or more before we have this transition done. So it's something that may not happen right away. She's not retiring. It could be forcibly stepping back or deciding to step back a little bit. So she still wants to make movies and still wants to be in this business. And she'll basically work till she's dead.
Yeah, I mean, if that's her ambition, good on her for it. We'll see, how it works out as far as being president of Lucasfilms. Doesn't sound like she's got too much longer at that, but I'm sure she'll be all right and land on her feet with whatever she ultimately decides to do. But yeah, this whole power struggle and top line restructuring at these companies is going to be, like I said, real interesting to see how it all shakes out. Especially if Kevin Feige does pull the trigger and jump over to Lucasfilm, who winds up taking up the head of Marvel. That's going to be a very, very big and very important hire for whoever winds up sitting in that chair. Mm-hmm. And since you're already paying him $150 billion to come back and do it, just put Robert Downey Jr. at the head of Marvel. Why not?
And so Robert Downey Jr. is now taking over Marvel.
Yeah, I am Marvel. That's gonna
every movie that comes out, it's just every actor is Robert Downey Jr.
There you go. Mega hit, print money. Let's go. but I'm being facetious when I say that. But it is very crucial who they get in there to run it. Now, could it potentially be a dual role? And since they've already invested so much in the Russo brothers, are they quietly in the running? Who knows? But we'll see what happens with it.
Yeah, especially with Lucasfilm, you have a lot of projects in the works that just haven't gotten off the ground. We have Patty Jenkins' X-Wing movie that she's supposed to do with the Rogue Squadron and everything. You have Taika Waititi is still working on something there. You have I think there's 6 or 7 different Star Wars projects outside of The Mandalorian and Grogu and, the next film that's supposed to wrap up Ahsoka and Mandalorian and all that. There's quite a lot in the works. A lot of it's still tied around that trilogy sequel. So that could, if within the next year we do get a change at the helm of Lucasfilm, could that affect a lot of those films, especially those that are tied to the trilogy? Maybe like, you know what, the fans aren't digging what we do with the sequel trilogy. Let's just scrap everything we have and go in a new direction.
Fresh slate. It could be the change that they need to move them in a positive direction forward. So we'll see how it works out.
I'm going to take us into our next story, which is a studio that has had a lot of change lately, with James Gunn taking over the creative and everything of DC. We know the new DCU is starting to roll off. We get Superman this year. We just had Creature Commandos, which was kind of the official first kickoff of the new DCU, but they laid out a plan, and it's a very ambitious plan that they're looking to release 7 different projects in the DCU a year. That's 2 live action films, 1 animated film, 2 live action shows, 2 animated shows. We know Marvel was doing that for a little bit and they have scaled back, but now DC is amping it up of having 7 a year. And they said that's for the next 6 years. And at the end of those 6 years, they do have a plan for an Avengers Endgame type of story. Like, they're going to do this big, huge mashup of everything that they've done for the next 6 years, and it's going to be Endgame level.
It's insane to think about the fact that they could just have just an explosion of content like that. It's crazy. We've already kind of talked about some of the stuff that they're doing. Obviously, you have Lanterns, who is now in production. We got our first kind of visual still,
that apart.
A visual still of Aaron Pierce and and Kyle being a part of that show. You obviously have the still with him having the ring as Hal Jordan on his finger.
But wearing plain clothes, and of course the internet being the internet is just tearing it apart.
Doing internet-y things, and I've harped on the internet enough today. But, obviously got Peacemaker right now that's going to have their next season coming up, wildly successful for that. We've talked about Creature Commandos already. We've got other stuff that we know is on the docket coming forward, like the Booster Gold series.
Like Supergirl's almost done filming.
Supergirl filming currently. You've got Superman getting ready to kick everything off, live action-wise in a couple months as well. So stuff that's already in the works that we're aware of. But the fact that they've got that much content that they're coming out with that quickly, it's a choice. Because a lot of it hinges on how, in my opinion, it hinges on how good Superman is. Now, don't get me wrong. From the trailer alone, super excited about this film. It looks incredible. I'm hoping that it's the hit that they need to kind of spring forward everything else that they want to do. If this movie flops, I don't know long-term how this is going to work. I really don't, because if you're not successful out the gate, nobody's going to care about a significant amount of things that come after that.
Yeah, because DC already is not without its controversies. We know how everything went with Zack Snyder's verse with Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, and how all those films, and how the, Blue Beetle did okay, but a lot of people have already kind of, because of how disjointed and crazy DC films and stuff was getting at the end, people started not caring as much. So Superman is huge for this to go. It's also interesting to see, because James Gunn has said that we're not going to announce anything unless we have the scripts done and ready. And so now you're announcing 7 a year for the next 6 years. Do you have all that ready? Did you change your tone on that? Because we've also heard like the Waller series are doing, they're having trouble with the scripts. There's the 4 or 5 different projects that they've already kind of talked about is coming. They've come out and said, yeah, we're having trouble getting the scripts right and getting those rolling. So, I mean, if that's 4 from 1 year or 4 from 2 years, that's a big hit to your production and what you're going forward with that. Because 7 is very ambitious, especially if you're not wanting to move forward and greenlight anything until you have it ready. That's basically saying, all right, we have to get 7 things out now.
Yeah, it's very ambitious. It's very, shoot for the stars and hope you land somewhere short of that. Maybe. I don't know, but it's so much content. And don't get me wrong. For us, that's great news. Are you kidding me? We've got, if that all comes through, heck yeah, we got all this stuff that we can, plan on booking in to cover for the show and everything. And it's exciting for us content-wise, but I'm sitting here like, we literally just talked about how Marvel completely oversaturated themselves with multiple TV series, multiple movies. Like 4 movies in a year is absolutely insane to get anybody to care about. Like,
Yeah, because they were almost like up to 80 a year because it was about 4 series and about 4 films.
Like they were pumping out stuff left and right, and you saw where the diluted quality in it came. And, smartly they've scaled back, and now they're trying to recover from that still. Like, it's a very ambitious take. At the end of the day, if the stories are good and the shows are quality, it'll work. But that's a lot of stuff you're hoping to hit on. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, that's a big swing, but you better come correct with everything you put out. Because if something is... I think if you get maybe 8 projects, right, or if you talk about 7 of them that are coming out in a year, if 6 of them are high quality, I think you'll be a little more forgiving about the one bad one. Mm-hmm. Versus if you're trying to shove 7 things out and 2 of them are decent and the rest are just kind of terrible, like, it's not a good look.
And especially everything's connected, so it's not like you can just scrap those and go again. Everything you're putting out right now is supposed to be connected and keep going, so...
That's the key.
Yeah, are you going to have reboots after you said everyone's going to be playing these characters and everything else? You even with DC, it's weird as well because they have their mainline stuff and then have their Elseworld stuff that happens outside of it. Like Robert Pattinson's Batman is outside of the main DCU, but they're still moving forward with at least 2 more of those films. You've got the Clayface film coming out. You've got quite a bit of stuff that's going to be outside of the main DCU, but how much of that, is it 4 main DCU projects? Is it 3 Elseworld projects? We don't exactly know, but we know that if it's in the main DCU, animated or live action, it's supposed to be connected. So that's a lot of moving parts to stay connected. So if 5 of those are DCU, that's 5 projects a year you have to make sure are connected or using the same actors or using the same everything to keep your continuity all the way throughout, because that was the big problem with DC before, is there was no continuity. We just jumped around and did various things. Like we got the Justice League movie before we got Wonder Woman and Aquaman. Or I think we got Aquaman, but we didn't get.
We got Wonder.
We didn't get Flash.
Yeah, we didn't get Flash, and we barely got Wonder Woman before they made the Justice League film, and it was a terrible case of them trying to keep up with Marvel without having the equity that Marvel had built. Like that was the big problem that they had. But like we said, they're shotgun blasting us with all of this content supposedly, and it's all supposed to work, and it's all supposed to be interconnected, and everybody's like having job security. Like if I'm an actor and I want job security, I'm signing up for DC right now to be a part of that, just because like, hey, even if it's not good, I'm gonna have work for a while unless something drastically changes. But it's them betting on themselves, and I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate the ambition, and I appreciate the want to have this be successful. But like I said, you better hit. And you better hit hard.
It's a lot, even for big fans of Marvel DC, having 7 projects to keep up with a year, especially knowing that they're all supposed to be interconnected other than the Elseworld stuff, that you have to keep up with everything to know exactly what's going on. And that's where I fell out with the CW shows a little bit, just because I had to watch a Flash, I had to watch Arrow, I had to watch, the Tomorrow was semi-connected but not connected, but it just felt like at times with this stuff between animated and like comics and shorts and then team ups, and we're going to talk about this a little bit when we get into our Daredevil Netflix series, because they kind of hit that when they started expanding and doing more and doing team ups. Is like when you expand too much, it becomes really hard for even hardcore fans to stay connected with it, because all right, I've got to watch 3 films, 4 TV series. Is there be a comic offshoot that I have to read as well? Is there a short? Are they going to appear somewhere else? Like, how do I keep up?
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? Like, if you're a fan of literally anything outside of this, like, there's so much content that's out there already. Like, that's not talking about anything that's either Marvel related or not Marvel related. That's huge properties. Like, you have other big shows that exist outside of this, right? That there's just so much content for people to keep up with, and you're banking on people to be in the know. And I think that's where Marvel, I think, realized that they got a little too lost in the sauce of trying to push too much out. And you're just like, well, I hadn't seen this. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, like, do I need to see Moon Knight to understand what's going on in Spider-Man or something? You know what I mean? Like, people are trying to say, like, okay, we're supposed to understand that these stories are connected somehow. Logically, story-wise, it's not always the case, but they're hoping that you're watching everything and keeping up with everything. That's a big time commitment to ask from people who obviously have other interests outside of comic books. Like, we're guilty of that too. Like, we love, comic book properties and entities, and we'll always talk about them. Literally, our next news story is going to be about something comic book adjacent as well. But, if you have any other interest or, God forbid, time in life to do other things outside of it, it's going to be almost impossible to keep up with. And I'm just wondering if they're getting a little too ahead of themselves with trying to push so much content out so quickly. And I understand you want to strike while the iron's hot, but like I said, it better hit. It better hit, because if they miss all of these plans you've got in the works for the next 6 years, not going to make it 6 years if you stumble hard. And I hope they don't. I hope they hit on a majority of the stuff that they have coming out, but it's not a guarantee.
You even look at Warner Brothers, who owns DC. We have the Harry Potter reboot coming out soon, so that's going to be another commitment for fans that can fit in the same with the comic books and with Harry Potter. We're both big fans of Harry Potter and stuff, so on top of that, from Warner Brothers, we're going to have the Harry Potter series to watch. And we can even look at Dune, how they've handled Dune. We've got Part 1 and Part 2. We have Messiah coming out, but they have several shows that they're doing. I haven't watched Dune Messiah yet, or not Messiah, but Prophecy that they did, which even though I loved Dune Part 1 and Part 2, I didn't feel connected enough to go into that show or invested enough to want to watch that show, because you didn't have the main people involved who did it. It's set in a different time period, because there is a definite oversaturation that can happen. Same thing to me happened with The Walking Dead, that I was huge into the main show, and then you've got Fear the Walking Dead, and you've got 6 other spinoffs. I think you have 3 different spinoffs running right now. Like they're just taking it and just running it way too much, in my opinion, that I kind of fell out of caring. We've talked about it several times here. I still have not gone back and watched the final season of The Walking Dead, because I feel like I just kind of lost interest, not only because of writing and stuff went down, but they expanded so much. I'm like, I just don't have time to keep up all of this, and I feel like I'm missing out if I don't watch Fear the Walking Dead, because they move characters over there, and you have characters connected here and there, but they also announced a lot of these spin-off shows before the main series was done, so like a lot of the show with The Walking Dead was who's going to survive and who's not. Well, if these 6 characters already have a spinoff show, they're going to survive. So it kind of takes away some of that
at the end of the show,
dread and everything else. But yeah, I think Walking Dead, and even already with Dune, you're seeing, all right, we're already trying to oversaturate a little bit too much. They need to make sure they're staying in that realm that makes it easy for the fans to follow, and not feel like overburdened that it's a job and a chore to keep up with everything that's going on.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff to keep up with, and we'll continue to try to make sense as most of it as best we can. But I want to move on to our next news story, which, jumping from DC back to Marvel, we got some good news coming out if you're fans of the Punisher. Obviously, Daredevil Born Again is coming up. We're super excited about that. We're going to talk about Daredevil on Netflix here in a minute before we go into that. But one of the big standouts from the Daredevil series was everybody's love of Jon Bernthal as Frank Castle the Punisher, and his successful show that he had as well. And he's notorious for coming back in Daredevil Born Again. We'll see him in what capacity he is in that show is to be determined, obviously. But Marvel's been so impressed with him now that he's getting his own individual special on Disney Plus that's going to be shot here soon, and I can't be more excited about that. He's getting his own standalone special feature on Disney Plus, and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, they called it a Marvel special presentation, which is done with a few things so far, but we don't know if that means it's a hour-long just episode of something, if it's going to be like a mini-series, if it's going to be basically a film, but they're calling it I would love, in the end, for it to evolve to become another Punisher film. Like, I would love to see him get a full Punisher film to do. He is co-writing it, which is great that he's still that invested in the Punisher character after all this time, to want to not only come back in Daredevil Born Again and come back into the MCU as Frank Castle, but also, I'm going to help write and get this project going the way I feel it needs to be, because he's felt very connected to that character. It's one that he has just, it's become his. Like, we've had some other good actors that have portrayed the Punisher. The movies may not have been the greatest things, but they did a decent job as Frank. But he definitely took over this character as being his own and everything else. And it's great to see that not only is he returning to act in it, but he's going to help write it and make sure that story's right, because they talk like it's like a shotgun blast of a story, but it still has all the emotion and the pathos and everything that you expect from such a tortured character, that they want to do it right. And you have Ronaldo Marcus Green, who did King Richard and among other things, is going to direct it, so they've got a decent and solid director behind it. They get the story right. I would love for this to evolve into a full feature film that maybe even gets a theatrical release, or at least gets a full good running time.
I think what it's ultimately going to wind up being is a slightly longer than average episode of a TV show. Not quite like a full 90-minute movie necessarily, but probably something that's a little over an hour, kind of akin to like the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. That's an easy one to kind of compare it to if you're talking about like Marvel special presentations. The Wolf movie that they did around Halloween also, so kind of something similar to that. I could see something in that realm of like special presentation where it's going to be like maybe a little over an hour 15, hour 20 of like a special thing just for him, like a special story they want to tell that's kind of outside of what they're doing with Daredevil. I'm just here for whatever they want to do with him. He is absolutely fantastic. The perfect choice for that. This is one of those cases where fan casting gets it 100% right, because I remember when he got introduced to it, they were talking about bringing the Punisher in. Everybody said, you need to get the guy who played Shane on The Walking Dead. You need to get Jon Bernthal. He would be amazing as Frank Castle, and they did, and it worked.
And he
so
was
good. And that's just perfect fan casting playing off. Sometimes it's okay to listen to the fans, guys. Like we're so connected to this material. We knew who would be probably really good at playing these characters. And that one was just an absolute grand slam of a choice. He's so fantastic in that show. The Punisher was absolutely brilliant. I love the show, love him as an actor anyway, and he's legitimately, from everything we've seen about, him interacting with fans, is legitimately one of the nicest people you can meet when you go to do like conventions and stuff. He's always super appreciative of fans, super talkative, super kind, and you love to see good things happen to good people like that.
Yeah, I got to meet him right before Merle passed, zombified on The Walking Dead at Horror Hound here in Cincinnati. And he was as kind, as gracious could be, took a photo, talked for a little bit, shook my hand, like he was great as could be. And that was like right before he was heading in to be the Punisher as well. And he was already doing some big films at that point. He's just a fantastic guy. It seems that really commits himself to the roles and stuff he does, because he's played some brutal characters, and you believe it. Like, he's a guy like, yeah, okay, you want him to play a violent, brutal character? Yeah, he's got it down packed. But yeah, it's probably going to be along the lines of the other special presentations they've done, but maybe they'll like it enough that it turns into something more. Absolutely. But just keep giving me more Punisher, more Frank Castle. I'd love to see him pop up in the next two Avengers films and seeing him in Doomsday or something. I still would love. It would be a lot of fun to see him in the Punisher War Machine outfit, to see him take on that as well. Like, give us that variant version of Frank Castle where he's in the War Machine armor with, I think visually just seeing the War Machine armor with the Punisher logo on it and Jon Bernthal in the suit would just be incredible, and just mowing people down, and it would be crazy. It may be a little too violent for Doomsday and the Avengers films, but I would love to see that.
He's a violent character, but as we've seen recently, Marvel's not shying away from the violent stuff. Like we're talking about, like, obviously Deadpool and Wolverine was as gruesome and violent as you've ever seen from Disney. And now we're talking about Daredevil coming out that's getting a TVMA rating. It's not shying away from...
I've seen the violence even goes further than they did in the Netflix series, which was dark and violent.
And dark, which I love to see them taking more risks with their stories like that, accepting the fact that you have adult fans of content that are willing to accept mature content like this. And, just love to see them do that. I want to see them... I would, just for the fan of the video game fan in me, I would love to see them throw in like an Armed and Dangerous line from him as the Punisher. If you played the game Marvel Rivals, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But just put him in everything you can Marvel related right now. He's so brilliant of an actor. But the character that he plays is very integral in so many Marvel stories that you want to see that. I like to see him connected more around like the grounded street level stuff that they're talking about, like in Daredevil. I'd love to see him pop up in the next Spider-Man movie because it's going to be a more grounded street level. Spider-Man and the Punisher have quite a history together. Spider-Man and Daredevil have quite a history together. I'd love to see all these inner workings and have those guys show up in the next Spider-Man film if he's going back to that street level superhero that he looks like he's going to be. Have them be a part of that, and I'm super excited for the potential of those story directions. You could have something really, really cool on your hands.
Oh, absolutely! Like just keep Jon Bernthal around the MCU for a while. Keep Charlie Cox. Keep Vincent D'Onofrio. Keep all of them. Like we. Not only do we love, again, we're doing a revisit of Daredevil this episode of the Netflix Daredevil, but these were fantastic actors who did their roles so well. They deserve to be able to get more out of these characters and have the success in the MCU like they should have, because I mean the Netflix series were lightly connected at one point but disconnected, and then they weren't going to connect Daredevil Born Again to the Netflix series, and then they changed it. Like, it's a good change that they've decided to connect it back to the Netflix series and bring all the actors back because they were just so fantastic.
I'm just ready for everything they've got coming forward in that realm, and I'm so excited, like I said, to talk about Daredevil here in a minute too. Obviously, I'm going to be ready to wax poetic about how much I love that show.
And I'm going to blame Key and Peele if I mess up this next story, because AMC CEO Adam Aaron, or Aaron, because I just immediately goes to my head when I see Aaron in there, that he has come out talking about what we've talked about a lot on the show here, is that it's getting really ridiculous, the short amount of time span that movies are taking from going to theaters to going digital demand, which in a way is good for fans. You can watch it at home, but it's also really bad for the theaters that you're not really giving these movies a chance to have a run. We've seen with many different films now that the longevity in theaters has really helped them to succeed. Like, I just talked about how Moana 2 didn't have a great, and Lion King, Mufasa, they both didn't. They had decent opening weekends, but it felt like they bottomed out. But they went on to have, because of the longevity in theaters, they went on to have a fairly successful theatrical run because they got, I mean, Mufasa's out on digital now. It's still in theaters that you can watch, but like Companion had an 18-day window between theatrical and coming at home. And, you know, he talked about how these 17-day and 30-day theatrical windows are way too short, but they have to convince every single major studio to agree that it's worth to keep these films in theaters longer. But he does say it's a very active debate, and among the theater owners, along with the studio owners and stuff, that they're highly debating it. But with streaming and, you know, what COVID did to the industry and stuff, there's a lot of change. But, you know, he's feeling like a lot of us are, that these are just way too short.
Yeah, it's a debate that I'm glad to see that people in the industry are having, because we've talked about it here. Like, and I'd like to hope that we could, you know, help influence some habits of the industry like that. Which,
other than me calling him Aaron now, he's not going to call us anymore.
Thing of me to say, but still, but it's a debate that, you know, if we're talking about it, you know, they have to at least be considered. You're hoping they're considering it and thinking about it, right? So, like, us as consumers, gone are the days now that, you know, these movies have this long theatrical run. And I think that, you know, they're banking so much on everybody wanting to go out and see a movie with urgency. Like, you don't take into account, you know, the families that may not be able to afford to go see a movie the week it comes out because they have something going on. Well, you're already on to the next thing, and they may not go see it. But if you give it a few weeks and they're like, hey, we can finally go out, you want to go see this movie while it's still in theaters, like, there's a very sizable portion of the market that could still, you know, consume content that way, and it feels like you're alienating and isolating it. Well, now they're just in the habit of, oh, we'll just wait till it comes on, you know, Disney Plus, or we'll wait till it comes out on
And
Netflix.
COVID definitely changed a lot of that, because a lot of stuff is going straight to streaming. People are like, oh, all I got to do is wait a few weeks and I can watch it at home.
Right, and we're seeing the ebb and flow of that just from our personal theater going experiences, because there's weeks where we go to the movie theater, and, you know, since we love what we do so much, we're at the theater virtually every single week, unless we're doing like a double episode of something for what have you. But we're at the theater so much. One, everybody at the theater knows who we are now, which is crazy to see. But it's also like, we see weeks where we'll go to a movie and it's packed, and we have difficulty finding a parking spot, or we jokingly say our spots are taken. But and we go as recently as the film we're going to talk about this week that we went and saw, there was virtually nobody there. at the theater overall to see everything that was out. And it's just that ebb and flow of, consumer habits and things like that are a very interesting case study of why there's arguments to be made why they should be in the theaters longer and why they shouldn't be, just based on, consumer trends and everything that you're seeing. So I'm glad that they're at least having that debate internally in the industry that's like, hey, are we doing the right thing by pulling the plug too soon on these movies? Or are we finding success, at least for our bigger movies, to have that longer extended stay? Because if you have a movie that opens up to like a $2 million opening, you're not probably going to keep it in theaters for 6 weeks. Like, I get that, but if you're pulling the plug too early on, like, say, let's just use Fantastic Four as a benchmark for that. Obviously, we know Fantastic Four is going to make a ton of money, but if it's only in theaters for a month, and it could be 6 to 8 weeks that it could be in the theaters, and it's still having a prolonged, successful stay in the theater, like, are they selling themselves short because they're pulling the plug too quickly? And it's a good debate for them to have.
Yeah, and look at one of the most successful movies of all time with James Cameron's Avatar. How long was that thing in theaters? Like, I feel like that movie was like 8 months in theaters. Like, yeah, it was
kept coming out
there for a very long time. They did several re-releases and stuff of it, but it does feel like if you don't have a smash hit opening weekend, they're already looking like, all right, when are we going to put it on digital and move on to the next film? And marketing has been so weird and strange and up in the air with a lot of films. Like, we talk about some movies, we see an oversaturation of stuff, while others you get like one trailer and you never hear about the film again because maybe the studio doesn't have as much like care about the film, or they don't think it's going to perform as well, or whatever it is. Like, there's some movies that they just throw out there, which I kind of think this movie we're reviewing today with Last Breath was kind of one of those. We saw the trailer once or twice, but not a whole lot else past that. It's one that I feel like, well, maybe they just didn't feel great about the film, but yeah, you'll get to see what we thought about it when we come up here. But it is bad that there's some smaller films and some films that could be really great and really good that just not giving the time to see how people will be. Because, most theaters have discount Tuesdays where you can go see the film cheaper. There might be weeks where there's movies that don't really appeal to you. So you may go to the theater and see something on its third or fourth week that you may really enjoy now, and you might have a lot of people. Again, we've had many films now that have showed that it's done okay in the opening, it's dropped big in their second week, but it stayed steady and ended up making a huge profit because they left it in theaters for a month or two.
Yeah, and it's an interesting case study. I would also love it. You brought up an interesting point that I'd kind of like to do like a study of us as somebody who does go to the theater all the time and see trailers over and over and over again before you come to the movie. Does it have an effect on how we feel about the movie because we're oversaturated by just seeing the trailer at every movie?
I would almost say it probably did, because like you can go back and look at our Monkey review and how we felt on that movie. We saw that trailer before every movie for like, it felt like 6 months.
Every movie
and that might have affected us too. Like, all right, we've already seen the trailer 1,000 times. Now we finally got the movie, but did we see it too many times and affect how we feel about it?
Yeah, I'm just the psychological study of us, you know what I mean? Because we're outside the norm. We're people that go to the movies literally every week, unless we're doing a double feature, obviously, because we talk about the newest releases every single week. So we're in there significantly more than, I would say, 99% of the population that goes and consumes movies. But like, does that have an effect on us because we're so used to things? I couldn't tell you how happy I was to see Captain America Brave New World finally, because it felt like we watched that trailer week after week for a year. I saw that trailer significantly more times than I ever intended to, and wondering if it impacted our ability to enjoy the movie even.
I'll say it did to me, because it gave away Red Hulk too much, and that was kind of the biggest payoff of the film. And that's not really spoiling anything, because you've seen the same trailers and all the information, that the biggest payoff in the film was the introduction of Red Hulk, and we got that 27 times a movie.
Right. Yeah, it's just I'd love to see that too, just to see if we see so much of it that it does affect how we view a movie. But it's an interesting thing to see for sure.
And we've talked about several trailers as well. A lot of them were those romantic dramas and stuff that you get the trailers for, that it feels like they have shown you the entire movie in the trailer, to where I know I've been like, I don't even really know if I want to go watch or review that movie because I feel like I've seen the entire movie in the trailer, and I would almost say 90% of the time that's correct. That those trailers that you feel have shown you the entire movie have shown you the entire movie in the trailer, and it does affect that. Well, maybe I don't want to go watch it now because I've already watched it in the 2-minute trailer.
Like I said, we're kind of outliers to that, just because we go to see so many movies. I'm starting to kind of feel the way about the movie Drop coming up. That movie about where the girl goes on the blind date and she gets a message that's in there. I have that buzz, like, just earwormed into my brain a little bit. Like, I'll just hear like a random phantom just because it's so prominent in that trailer when we go see it. Like, but I understand that we're kind of outside of the norm on that. We're kind of speaking from just our own experience with it, but just seeing the same trailers for movies over and over months before we finally see the movie, I'm wondering if it does have an effect on if we enjoy it or not. It'd be fun to kind of go back and look at some of our reviews and how we talk about these movies. Is like, was it a movie that we saw a significant number of trailers for before we saw the movie finally, and did it really have any bearing on whether we enjoyed it or not? Yeah, it could be the case.
Because now that I think about it too, like Wolfman, we saw the trailer a ton.
Yes,
like there's a lot. If you see it too, you get a couple trailers to get you hyped up for it. Is one thing. So that's a really hard part. Like, if you're not showing enough, as we talk with like Apple TV, that they're not showing enough for their stuff. But if you're showing too much, it's kind of hard to find that happy medium. Like, well, you have to show enough to get people to want to come, but you don't want to show too much. And if they're seeing the same trailer over and over again, is it just beating them over the head of like, all right, we get it. This is coming out. Yeah. When those scenes that we see in the trailer come up, like, oh yeah, we've already seen all that. That's it has to affect you. It affects you in different ways, whether it's giving away too much about the film, or you're just seeing it way too much. Even though if the trailer's not giving away much of the story, if you're just seeing it too much, it definitely has to affect your feeling on the film at the end. Like, well, yeah, I saw the trailer so much, I thought it was going to be good, but there wasn't a whole lot else that was great outside of the trailer.
I might have to dive in and take a look at that for sure. It would be a fun case. It would be a fun case of study for us. But I do want to kind of move into one of our last main topics of the week, and we got a fun video that dropped during the week where, you know, they're currently shooting The Boys. They're getting ready to start shooting The Boys, the final season.
They are filming it right now.
They're filming it now. But we got a fun drop of a video where, you know, obviously Jensen Ackles is, you know, Soldier Boy, a very prominent character in the film. You also got Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who's in the film, so you can kind of see a little bit of the theme. Obviously, they're really well known for their appearances in Supernatural, but you see this video of, you know, Jensen Ackles calling up Jared Padalecki to just, hey, what are you doing? What do you got going on? You know, the fans really want to see this. And then all of a sudden you see like them bringing in, you know, Misha Collins into this too. So you're getting like a full blown Supernatural reunion in the final season of The Boys. It got a lot of people very excited. You know, that show has had, you know, it's got this, I don't want to call it cult-like status or following, but it wasn't ever the biggest show on television. But if you're a fan of the show, it has hardcore fans.
It ran for 763 years.
It did. I think it aired 750,000 episodes by the time it was done, if you talk to the right people. But it's got a hardcore of enough following that it has its own convention that people go to. Like, there's literally a Supernatural convention just for this show. Like, that's how hardcore and popular the fans of the show are. But it got the internet kind of buzzed and talking about, you know, got the hardcore fan base riled up to really have that venture over into this final season of The Boys, and it was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, what way to make sure that your final season is this? I mean, the show's already a smash hit, but if you want to make sure everyone's watching it, well, let's get the cast of Supernatural all to show up in it, and we'll see what happens with them. Do they all get to meet a gruesome, grisly death inside of the last season of The Boys? And could we see the car and we get the car blown up or destroyed and have them have a reaction? Like, because there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff that happens in The Boys, and they can definitely make some jokes at Supernatural's expense and, you know, have Soldier Boy kill all of them and then he meet his death by being crushed by the car or something. Like, they could do something really ridiculous fun, and I'm all for it because that series is about the ridiculousness and about the insane over the top, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I watched a few seasons of it. I never watched a ton of it. I did get to meet Jared and all of them at San Diego Comic-Con a few years ago, and they were not like, I'm just having conversation with them like they're buddies I'm hanging out with at a bar or something. Like, they're just talking to me like anything, like, which was really cool to see from guys, especially like at that point it was that the last season was about to premiere and show. This was one of their last appearances at San Diego Comic-Con, but they were just as humble and as nice to be to all the fans, to everybody who came through to meet them. Like, it was great to see that, they've been in other stuff. Of course, the Walker series has ended now, and you've had them in a lot of stuff, but it's really fun to see that they're still grounded and that they still want to come back together and do something fun together, like coming back for The Boys.
I love that. It definitely got the internet ablaze and talking, but it's going to be fun to see that how they integrate into this final season, because that show is just absolutely insane, and it's going to be fun to see how they integrate these guys into it. But that was one that definitely had the internet talking.
So I want to wrap up the news with some quick hits here. So this is something we haven't really done before, but there's a lot of little stories that came out that we wanted to talk about, but we didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on. But we know, and thank you to everyone who does come to us for their news and thanks us for all the news that we give. But we wanted to give a few quick hits here. So Spider-Man 4 has been delayed, but it's only a week to July 31st. So we know that there was a lot going on in that month where Spider-Man 4 is coming out. So they delayed it a week just to give themselves a little bit extra. So we'll see that on July 31st. Also got The Hunt for Gollum. That's been delayed to December 2027. So that's one, as Lord of the Rings fans, we're excited about, but we're also mixed on, because do we really need a Gollum movie? We've seen a game come out that bombed that was all about Gollum. It's going to be interesting to see how this movie really pans out. We're getting some of the original cast returning, but we'll see exactly. You've got Peter Jackson, Andy Serkis involved, and directing from Andy Serkis. So hopefully it turns out to be good, but we've got even longer to wait now because it's the end of 2027.
Cautiously optimistic is the best way I could describe that.
And very interestingly, we have a Hunger Games stage production that's going to be happening in London in October. And they have built a theater that is for this experience. And they're actually dividing the crowd up into districts. So you're going to be sitting in different districts. How that is going to play into the performance, we don't know if they're going to get crowd involvement, or maybe they'll turn the lights off on a district after they've been eliminated or something else. We don't really know, but it's really interesting to take something like the Hunger Games and turning it into a live stage production.
Yeah, that sounds like it could be a lot of interaction and fun that, get people excited about going to see plays again. Like, obviously, Broadway has its own, obviously built-in successful audience, but stage productions and plays, not really something you hear a ton of, but to have a concept like this is really cool and really fun. And are you a part of the winning district? You don't know. You won't know until you go to the show. And do they? My question is, do they change the ending every night? Is one of the things. Like, does the word start to get out? Like, hey, man, if you're gonna go sit in this section. This is the district that wins.
So it's kind of thinking about it like medieval times or something, that put on a show every night, but whoever is like the winner, the main knight or something that's going to win, it changes every night. They choose a different princess every night, so they change it up a little bit every night. So that will be interesting if they end up doing that. If there's a different champion, like you have your champions down there, and each section represents a champion, and they change up who is the winner of the Hunger Games every time, just to keep it fresh and interesting. Because if well, I'm in Katniss's section, we're gonna win. So, but maybe Katniss gets defeated, if Katniss is even part of it. We don't really know what kind of story it's adapting, just that it's coming out this October in London. If you're in that area and able to check it out, come let us know what it's like, because we're really interested to see what that is going to be about. But we also have Oscar Nunez will reprise his role of Oscar Martinez in the new Office series. So I believe that's the first former Office cast member who is confirmed to appear in the new Office series. Of course, that's supposed to happen about a newspaper in the Midwest. So we'll see how Oscar exactly fits in, if this is just a cameo or if he's going to have a bigger role, because he was accountant. So exactly what they might be calling him for, or where, if he moves and he comes be a part of it, we really don't know what his role is going to be.
And of course, it makes sense that Oscar would be the first person to kind of announce it. Oscar has, he's kind of an omnipresent character in that show. So it's a lot of fun to see how they're going to integrate him into the new one.
Yeah, I think I've rewatched The Office like 27 times now. So even though the later seasons are not as good, but that first about 4 or 5 seasons were fantastic. Just really fantastic. Same for like The Simpsons. Like those first, I would almost go up to 10 seasons for them, were just so incredible. Yeah. And then it just, because of anything that goes over 10 seasons really, or gets towards, it seems like 5-6 season is the golden point for shows, and once they cross that 5-6 season mark, things start to change and the stories aren't as engaging as they used to be.
Well, good news for you, we're on season 872 of The Simpsons right now, so it's still going strong, which is that alone baffles me, because in my opinion, those first 10 to maybe 12 or 13 seasons, depending on how you look at it, because there's still some high quality episodes up to, I want to say, like season 15 maybe, or 16, because I used to collect the DVDs, and it's one of my favorite shows of all time in that range, right? It's so many fun quotable things that I still quote to this day. But the fact that it's been around for coming up on 40 years, if you think about it, like, it's been around forever.
You have everything, even hysterical pregnancy.
Everything. It's just it was such a good show back in the day.
And what is a little disappointment to us, X-Men 97 Season 2 will not come until 2026 now.
That's unacceptable. But no, I'm so ready to have that show come back. Obviously, go back in our archives and check what we thought about X-Men 97, the first season. Just incredible cinematic animation. It was just an unbelievable show, and I'm excited to see where they move forward with that one.
And John Lithgow has confirmed he will be playing Dumbledore in the Harry Potter series. He did kind of talk about his own reservations, as well as the fans have talked about that. He's like, this is going to define the last years of my life, potentially. Like, I could be 87 to 90 years old before this show wraps. This could be the last things that I really do. And he said it was a big decision for him to commit to be doing this show. Yeah,
and we had our opinions on it. You can go back in our episode last week where we talk about it, much heavier in more detail, but it's good to see that, he shared, he understands, like, he's a human being. He understands what his limitations are too. And he was very open and honest about how he felt about making that decision. It's one that he didn't take lightly. I'm excited just from the quality of actor that he is to see his take on this character, but yeah, it's good to see him have that, kind of awareness and being open about it. I commend him for talking about it as openly as he did.
Yeah, absolutely, because there really hasn't been anybody. We've had a lot of rumor castings, but we haven't really had any solid castings, and he's the first one to really speak out about that. He's accepted the role, and he's going to be doing it, because, that's supposed to be filming here in the spring, so you got to think a lot of them have to be either committed or close to committing so they can get the ball rolling, because, if it's filming that shortly, if characters have beards, if they need to grow stuff out, they need to have time for that. Because sometimes a prosthetic beards and mustaches and all that just doesn't look very good. And if they're growing their hair out, and Dumbledore's kind of both, he's got long hair with a long beard, that's going to be mostly prosthetics, especially at his age and stuff. But hopefully it does well. But yeah, it's good that he not only confirmed it, but also talked about the reservations he had on doing it, because, it shows he's human, but also that he's well aware that I'm 80 years old this week. I could be, this week. He's going to be significantly older when he starts it, and that he could be close to 90 before it's over with.
Brilliant self-awareness, and just hoping nothing for the best from him. Like I said, it had nothing to do with his abilities as an actor. He's a fantastic actor. It's a huge get for the show. You have now one of your biggest characters in this entire series locked in, confirmed, that people know about. Excited for the rest of the casting info when that comes out, because you got to figure most of these people, if they're not already signed to do so, and they just haven't announced it yet, are imminently signing if they're going to start filming as soon as April. Like, they have to be ready to go now.
Yeah, and this next story is for my kids. Descendants 5 is in the works. This has been a big hit for Disney. It's mainly going to be known by the kids and the parents. It's something that's been on the Disney Channel and stuff, but it's had some big stars come out of it, and we have some actors come. We also had some tragedy with Cameron Boyce, who played one of the characters. He passed away from a medical issue way too young. That's kind of the most of the main cast didn't return to the fourth. I've seen all of them multiple times because of my girls, but they paid tribute to him in Descendants 4, but you kind of had a new cast that came in. We don't know if the original cast is going to come back, because it's got to be hard that they were, they did this all through their teens, and young 20s here that they became friends and had a huge bond. And when you lose someone that you're that close to, it's hard for you to want to come back to that world because, of course, Dove Cameron is probably one of the biggest names out of it. She's gone on to do Schmigadoon and a few other projects. And, we don't know if she's going to come back. If you haven't seen Schmigadoon, it's a crazy musical on Apple TV Plus that not a lot of people may know about, but it's got some good actors. It's got some crazy silliness over the top on it. You've got Alan Cumming in it. You have, I'm blanking on everybody's name, and I'm calling him Key and Peele because I'm not remembering his name.
Keegan-Michael Key.
Yeah, Keegan-Michael Key is one of the main stars in it. Again, my brain with names just wants to lose it. I am the name butcher.
I really just want to hear you say Schmigadoon again.
Schmigadoon.
It makes me smile. I just don't know.
It was a fun little series. I think it got 2 seasons. I don't know if they're going to do a third, but it was fun. You do have Dove Cameron was in the first season of that, and it was a lot of fun, but it's going to be interesting to see how long. A lot of these children's movies and shows can go on forever, but they also will have an abrupt stop, like when the kids outgrow the age that they can do it, or the just interest in it goes down. They will have some, like, I think Encanto characters are going to be playing a part, because if you don't know Descendants, it's all about the kids of the well-known Disney characters. So you have Maleficent's kid, and you have Beauty and the Beast, and you have just you even had Brandy came back as Cinderella, which was a nice touch for those who grew up and had her Cinderella as a kid, that they're bringing in all those kids, so we're going to have some kids from Encanto showing up with their parents being in there and get live action versions. So it's fun, it's corny, it's geeky, it's got some decent. I've listened to the soundtrack, probably 5,000 hours of listening to the soundtrack, so I know the songs and everything, but this one was mainly for my kids because I know how much they love that series and they're waiting for another to come out.
So you listened to it for 5,000 hours. How much more did you listen to it with your kids and not just yourself?
I don't want to say. Well, it's funny because we listen to it through my Apple Music account and stuff. So I will get the recap at the end of the year of what your most listened to stuff is. And it was like Zombies soundtrack, Descendants soundtrack, and Bluey soundtrack and everything. All of its kids music that was my top listen to for the last 5 years.
I love that for you. You tell you're a girl dad, but that's so funny because I know what you listen to when it's not that stuff, and it's so funny that none of it cracks your top listen to.
Well, we also have our girls who will sing along to Bodies by Drowning Pool as well,
right,
which is hysterical.
So funny. It's so funny, the dichotomy, but that's very on point for, you and your wife. I know the music that you both listen to. It's really funny. It's funny to see the dynamic between the two.
Now, this sneak peek has been widely talked about online, so we got our first look at Shrek 5, which the animation style has changed a bit. It looks like it's going more of the Puss in Boots style, where they've changed that up a bit, and that was mostly well-received, but it's not being well-received at all with Shrek here, because, it clearly looks like they've made the characters older. You have the kids are teenagers now, which we have Zendaya playing, playing the girl, I forget her name now because everyone's fighting over who she is because there's some ridiculous stuff coming out that I'm not even going to talk about where they're talking about with her character. But I'm looking forward to Shrek 5. It was something my dad loved, and he actually asked us a couple times to see Shrek 2 and 3 in theaters. He asked us to go to the movies with him so he could see it. So Shrek has always had something special, a part of me and stuff, and seeing Shrek 5 return, it's going to take a little bit because it's been quite a while since the fourth Shrek. At the end, we know the animation style is going to be updated. Things are going to be changed. Yeah. They've aged the characters a bit here. So I'm looking forward to it, but it's interesting that they got Zendaya on board because she actually spoke about a long time ago that she was obsessed with Shrek as well. So now she gets to be in it. But she's going to have 5 films out next year. She's going to have, 5 projects. Euphoria Season 3, which is going to be the final season, and then 4 potential major blockbuster films.
Yeah, good on her, man. She's killing it right now. She's at the top of her, if you want to call it Q rating. I don't know what the hell they call it now, but she's going to be a busy woman in 2026 for sure. Because like you said, you got the Christopher Nolan film, you've got Spider-Man 4, you've got this, she's just working on
the last Dune movie that potentially is going to be in.
So many things. I know we talked about it at the theater. I'm still holding my breath that they're going to actually have the final Dune film ready by the end of next year. But
if they have it ready. And our final quick hit here is we did get confirmation that the final season of Andor, Season 2, is coming out in April. They're going to break it up in an interesting way. We're getting 3 episodes dropped per week, but there will be a 1-year time jump after every week. So each 3 episodes
and a time jump.
In a time jump. Because they're going for a 4-year time jump overall throughout the final season of Andor here that gets us from where we started to where Rogue One began.
Yeah, and it's kind of a way of culminating that. It's going to be interesting to see how these episodes all work together to get them to this point. Just love the first season of Andor. Excited to see how they wrap it up here in the second season. We've always known that it was going to be 2 seasons, and I think for what they're trying to do, it's going to be an easy way to wrap it up into, Rogue One and where that story took off from. So I'm excited to see how they bridge the gap in this last season.
Yeah, the first season was fantastic, but it is definitely interesting to see, like, all right, you're telling 1 year worth of story across 3 episodes. Hopefully, I have faith after the first season that I can do it well, but I mean, that's a lot to try to tell in a potentially 3 hours if they're all hour-long episodes, which we haven't got confirmation on yet. What story's being told in 3 episodes that they can jump well ahead a year and then tell another 3 and then jump. Like, it's a very daunting task to say that you're telling 4 years of stories in 9 episodes.
Well, it's like it kind of feels like they're doing 3 movies in that sense, right? So
in a way,
they're doing like 3-hour-long episodes, that's a 3-hour movie. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like you could do the movie with the time jump to another movie, to another time jump to another movie. Like, that's not too preposterous. So we'll see the route that their shows go. But yeah, excited to see that one when it comes out for sure.
Yeah, man, we don't have long. It's, I think, April 22nd when that comes out. It's already March, so we have just a little over a month to go for that.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for that one when it drops for sure. But now I want to move us into our movie review of the week. We have Last Breath, so it stars Woody Harrelson as Duncan. It's got Simu Liu as David, and it's got Finn Cole as Chris, who's kind of our main subject of this character of this story. This is based on a true story, but this film is crazy as far as like what happens to it. There's not a ton of additional fluff and substance around this movie. So this is about a group of divers who it's laid out at the beginning that they have like one of what's considered one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. So these guys go down and dive and work on underground sewer pipelines in the ocean.
Oil pipelines.
Yeah, oil pipelines in the ocean, right? So these guys are down in the midst in the darkened depth of the ocean, which is already dangerous enough, but these guys are dropping down to very dangerous depths for human bodies to be in. So you have to take extra special precaution and care to make sure these guys don't die when they just dive down into the water. Like there's a lot that goes into it, and they do a good job of, laying everything out practically as far as like how they have to prepare their bodies and have to prepare their suits that they wear to dive in. And it's just a really well told story about these guys just going down for a regular routine maintenance dive that, for obvious reasons why it's made into a movie, doesn't go exactly the way they had it planned out.
Yeah, I was really surprised about how much I actually enjoyed this film because, as we spoke about earlier, that there wasn't a whole lot of advertising that came out for this. You didn't know a whole lot about it. And it's an hour and a half long movie, so there is not a whole lot of fluff. There's not a whole lot of depth as well, but it's based on a true story. So it's just trying to go through this fateful month that happened with these divers and stuff, and knowing it was based on a true story just made everything so much more tense to me because it's like, all right, they actually went through that. And you get towards the end of the movie, like most true stories, they give you an update and information about the real people, and you get to see that. But I thought they did a fantastic job with this film. Like it did what it set out to do. It's telling the true story of this incident that happened to these divers. And, we get a look into that life that they go onto the ship once, everybody is picked, and they have 3 different teams, and they all have to go into these big metal tubes where they're decompressed. They have to go through a couple weeks of decompression that gets their bodies ready to be able to go to the bottom of the ocean. Like this particular mission, they're going 300 feet under the surface of the ocean to the bottom that they have to get their bodies prepared for. And they say it jokingly and they're all tongue in cheek, but it's like, yeah, if you decide to step out or, exit while the decompression is going, all of your organs will explode. Like, okay.
Yeah, they do a very good job of laying the seriousness of it out, like, for sure.
Yeah, but I don't know if you the same with it, and I don't know if it affected my viewing on it and stuff as well. But Finn Cole, who played Chris, who was our main diver that we, our experienced the story through. I was getting Heath Ledger vibes from him through the whole movie. Like he looked a bit like Heath Ledger.
A little bit. Yeah.
It was a character I could see Heath Ledger playing. It just kind of made me feel like I was watching Heath Ledger again. And it's not a knock on him. He did a great job, and his face is his face. Yeah. But that's a great comparison that he reminded me of Heath Ledger. So I think that added a little extra emotional impact to me because it felt like I was watching Heath on screen again.
A little bit, yeah. But I mean, you have this fun dynamic of a team with, Woody Harrelson as Duncan,
Woody is just so good.
He's fantastic in this movie. Like he's really good, and he is, playing this experienced diver who's kind of like the leader, like a mentor to a lot of these guys. And you come to find out he's on his supposed last run here. Like he's being phased out by the company that he works for because he's been doing it forever. Kind of like a forced retirement kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, this is your last one. But he doesn't want to do anything other than be a diver because these guys are like, why don't you go and sit up in the chair and go like lead some of these missions? And he's like, nah, man, I'm a diver. It's what
I'm
I
not
do.
management.
Like, he's like, yeah, I'm not corporate management material kind of thing. And I get that. And you have seemingly who's played David, who is the prototypical like superstar diver, kind of like
best of the best.
Yeah,
he's ripped. He's
top of the line, best shape, and you can very much tell from this movie that he is getting in shape to play Shang-Chi in a future Marvel property because he looked absolutely jacked in this movie. Like he was in really good shape for this, and it definitely wasn't to play this role necessarily. You can tell he's kind of gearing up for a superhero run, which thank God. Let me say that as an aside, 'cause we've been talking about Shang-Chi forever, but either way, like he does a really good job in this role too, playing that kind of like serious superstar diver who takes his training very seriously, takes his job very seriously, but has a little bit of a heart, as you come to find out, like in this movie, where he feels like he comes off straight and to the point and kind of blunt, but cares about the people that he works with. And
it's because he's got something as well, which he doesn't like to talk about because he doesn't want to think about it till he's over with it. He's got something to go home to, and he wants to make sure he gets home.
Right. He takes that very seriously, which understandably, but yeah, they go on, they get ready for this mission, and obviously for reasons of the movie and to make sense, they're the first group that's prepared to go out and start this dive and go down and work on, restoring this generator for this pipeline, and it just sets up that, obviously Duncan's the guy in the box to kind of set them up to get their gear right. So it's David and Chris going down on this dive as a two-man team, and you get what I think they do so effectively is the lighting and lack thereof, the realistic look of them diving down into the ocean. It's not well lit at all. It's dark. It's gritty.
It's pitch black. Because, they're 300 feet under the ocean.
Yeah, it's a very realistic portrayal of that. And you get some cool, like, what you can tell is very much real life footage that they've taken from, people that have done these types of things and put it into this movie, because you see barely like a bright green hue from the light of the camera lighting these guys as they move along. And a lot of times in a movie that can take you out of it, but it does such a good job of keeping you hooked that it forces you to kind of watch and pay attention, because it has all of that tenseness down. Is there, sea life that's going to play a factor in this movie? You just can't see it coming. And, they do a good job of keeping that seriousness and that tone of, you're down here in the dark and you don't know how it's going to play out. And they do a really effective job of, using lighting in that way to kind of keep you engaged and keep you focused. Because like you said, there's not a lot of substance to this movie, but it's very true to form and like accurately portraying what these guys have to go through to do this mission. And I commend them for doing that.
Yeah, I feel like they paid a lot of attention to making sure what you were watching felt real, from how the ship operated to what they had to go through to get ready to the dives, and how absolute pitch black dark it's going to be, that they have to use compasses and other things to navigate because they can't see. And there is a decent amount of terror, because there is a point where, of course, one of them is down there by himself because he loses his umbilical cord, and he has to find his way back to the stack, to the generator, to get on top to be able to be found. And the flares just going out, and you're seeing just how pitch black, like he wasn't very far away from it when he got knocked off, but he cannot see more than a couple feet in front of him to tell which direction he needs to go. It's like, okay, how do I find my way back when you're literally in pitch black darkness? And they did a great job of setting that atmosphere and setting everything up and doing realistic lighting to where not everything is overly like, Game of Thrones has been knocked about how dark it was to try to do realistic with their fights and stuff of how it would look, but this was perfectly done to how they needed to be, because you needed to know the situations that they go into, what they have to deal with to do this work. And they're going out there for a month at a time, but it can be very dangerous, and there's so much stuff that can go wrong, and there's kind of very little that they could do to help. And Chris's story is really miraculous and incredible to hear. Like, it really had me intrigued, and it had me set knowing, like, and I didn't know anything about his story going in. So when you're getting into the meat of the danger and the height of the film, I'm like,
is he gonna make
okay, he doesn't make, this is way too long. Like, how's he, he's gonna have oh wait, this is how it actually happened. Like, wow, like it's an incredible for him and for everything else. Like, I think they did a fantastic job of telling his story. Again, it's not super deep, but it does just enough. It does enough to get you introduced to Chris and his fiance, and to kind of care about these divers that are going down. And we have the second group where it's just kind of there. They're not fully a part of it, but it is about those main three. And again, Woody is just so fantastic. Even if he does at times plays similar characters, that's the guy who's just going to cut up and be sarcastic with you, but he puts his personality into it, but he's funny and he's humorous in it, but he also packs a little bit of emotional punch when he gets to that part that we get a little bit of drama and everything with what's going on, and you feel dread and you feel terror for what they're going through and them being trapped down there. And, when they're dealing with really hard currents, like they're going out and basically in the middle of the storm, but they feel like, all right, it's being 300 down, they're going to be well enough. But, stuff goes wrong down below, goes wrong up top. And I think they just did a great job. Great acting, great presentation, great lighting, cinematography. Like, I think they just did a really good job overall of presenting us this true story. And then giving us that look at the end was just a good way to hammer it home, like, yeah, this really happened. This is how everything turned out in the end. Like, even though some of it may not feel believable, it's what actually happened. And it's just wild that what happened actually happened.
Yeah, and you get, there's a second group of kind of ancillary, not quite main characters, but kind of important to the story too, and it's the crew of the ship that is trying to navigate the ocean too. So to add a little bit of context to what we're talking about, you have your main ship that these guys board, and they're part of this big crew, and you have like the main cabin crew are kind of the other characters here. One of them is their boss, kind of helping navigate everything. You also have the captain of the ship and his first lieutenant. We're kind of making decisions on, do we keep going? Do we try to do this? There's a point where they have to manually try to get the boat back to the point where they get knocked off from, because the boat gets knocked off, of course, of where they're trying to drop. And that's where the whole, context of the rescue mission, are they going to make it back to, save the day kind of thing and help get these guys back out of the water. And, they do a good job of building that tension there and some really creative ways of getting the ship back to where they need to. And it's just what Chris ultimately winds up having to go through, and I know we really haven't touched on it, is nothing short of a miracle what happened to this guy. Like, a little light spoiler to hear, obviously there's a little bit of a happy ending to this, which thankfully there is, to kind of help with some levity to this, but what he went through was insane, and the fact that he was able to make it on the other side of it to tell this story is just incredible, because you get what happens in the fallout from it at the end of the movie, where they talk about what happened with these characters after they ultimately do make it out. So, a little spoiler, it is a little bit of a happy ending to this, but it's just very tense and very, like, you ask yourself how. Like, it's incredible that it's actually a true story.
Yeah, I'll continue with the spoiler on it, because it is, I think, important to talk about with the film, to know that terror and dread that you get with it, because Chris ends up having his umbilical cord severed, which is his oxygen and everything that keeps him breathing underneath the water and also keeps him tethered to, the pod that drops him down 300 feet underneath the water. And he only has about 10 minutes of air supply in their backup. Yeah. And so he spent 29 minutes without oxygen, 300 feet below the ocean on this.
Insane.
And he survived with no real issues afterwards. Like I said, physically and mentally, as you're thinking, or if he survived, then he's going to have some severe mental problems because of brain damage from being without oxygen for 29 minutes and stuff. But it was an absolute miracle of what he ended up going with. And sorry for spoiling that part, but it's just something we want to talk about. Like, it's just incredible that, 10 minutes on that oxygen, 29 minutes without any oxygen to his brain at all. And he survived and had no issues.
It's so incredibly tense. It's well done. The acting, like getting him out of the water and trying to revive him and trying to resuscitate him. And just, he does such a brilliant job of just kind of emoting that vegetative state that you find him in, because he's been without oxygen for pretty much 30 minutes. Like he clinically should not have survived it at all. And that's what's so incredible about this story. And they have a little thing at the end where they were like, he was studied extensively by doctors who can't explain how he made it. Like at all. Like clinically, there's no reason he should be alive.
They said a mix of maybe because of the decompression he went through and they used warm water to keep their body regulated because it's extremely cold down there, that may have played a factor, but they can't figure out why he lived.
Yeah, still can't figure out. It's a medical miracle. Some things just can't be explained. Kind of calls into your question, like, is it a faith-based reason or whatever you want to assign to it. But like it was so good, so well acted, so well emoted. I got a ton of enjoyment out of this film because they did such a good job of keeping that tension throughout the entire film, where, some of the dialogue is a little kind of corny, especially with the main cabin crew, and some of the stuff that they had to go through just to get the ship back to them was kind of just like, whatever. But I'm willing to kind of overlook it just to talk about how impactful the performances of our three main characters were. So good from all three of them.
And you got to think with what not only the crew who dove along with the crew running the ship, of their recollection of what happened, because it was such a crazy, tense moment that they're trying to go through. But I do want to give one final tiny little spoiler here with that ending and everything. And it was a last message that they gave us at the end of the film after the recapping the real story and the real thing with Chris, is that Chris and the whole crew went back down afterwards to finish the job. So he went for almost 30 minutes without oxygen at the bottom of the ocean. And what was it, 3 months later, he went back and completed the job. Like, that's, you would think it's something like, hey, we're not going to go, I'm never diving again. He was back in the water 3 months later. That's just absolutely crazy. But yeah, in the end, Last Breath was a surprise film to me. Like, I went in with kind of low expectations and they kind of blew me away. It had a good tension. It had great acting. It made you feel uncomfortable. I mean, those that might be claustrophobic or have trouble with ocean or deep water or something is going to feel a little uneasy. It made you feel uneasy. It kept the tension high and tight and everything. I'm going to give this an 8. Like, I really felt that everyone did their job well, even though it's based on a true story, but there was no fluff. It's an hour-and-a-half movie. It was kind of thin other than, well, this diver's going on this, we're going through it, but it told what it was doing very well. So it didn't need anything else. So yeah, an 8, I think 8.5 was a really solid movie, which I do want to kind of watch again. Like, I think they did a fantastic job with doing the underwater scenes. The acting was great. Like, they just kept me intrigued and engrossed with this film all the way throughout.
Yeah, I agree. Like, you're not getting the most extensive laid out plot, but they do a good enough job in this movie of getting you to care about our three main characters at the bare minimum, which is very effective because they do the heavy lifting in this movie. Yep. They are the ones that are in, roughly 90% of the film. They do a good enough job of getting you to care about them, the situation they're in. They do such a good job of practically lighting the film and showing, just the lack of light and how they navigate that and the real tension, and they do a good job of capturing that. You're not getting a lot of fluff with extra music and other things like that. That's kind of to to kind of add to the ambiance about that. It's intentionally not there to kind of keep that uneasiness to it. It's a very quiet movie to watch. So
I was going to say the sound, when they want you to feel the sound, was loud and
Right.
it hit hard, like
was
with
impactful.
the waves crashing into the ship and other stuff. Like when it wanted you to feel something, it hit you big with the audio. But most of the time, it was a very kind of quiet, subdued film.
Yeah, and they do a good job of navigating that like through this film, and you know, you care about the characters. You have this very clearly laid out, and they executed the film well. Does it have its? Is it a perfect movie? No, but it does such a good job of keeping your interest and keeping your engagement in this film through all the tension that they keep, that it's going to score a higher mark for me. I'm going to give it an 8 as well. Like, I was landing in that area. Like, I was very pleasantly surprised with the quality of the movie that it is. Like, it's not an award worthy film necessarily, but like it was really effective in what it laid out, and it was successful in its execution. So I have to reward that. Like, I think Woody Harrelson gives a great performance for himself. And the real shining star of this movie, in my opinion, is Finn Cole as Chris. Like, he does such a good job of getting you to care about him as a character, and then just like navigating in the emotion and everything that he feels in this movie. You felt that coming through the screen, and he did such a fantastic job of portraying this. And like you said, just the emotionless, like vegetative state that he has to stay in, just the acting without doing anything really. And he just does such a good job of like, I remember just like noticeably leaning forward in my seat when I was, and I don't do that a ton for movies, when I kind of just kick back and let it go. But I was like attentive and looking like, oh, like, is he gonna make? Because we don't know. We didn't know his story. Like, we didn't know. Like, they do a good job of keeping you on that hook until the very end, when he finally kind of abruptly snaps out of it and kind of comes back to us. And then, you know, Woody Harrelson making a very Woody Harrelson-esque joke to kind of, you know, it kind of cuts some of that tension a little bit, which is very needed in that sentence.
We made out a little bit, but I'll
tell you about
later.
it later. Like, what happened? He's like, we made out a little bit. I'll tell you about it. It is very funny, but like not taking anything away from the seriousness of the scene either. It's very much how like two friends would.
But also showed it was kind of realistic to what it was, because it showed some actual footage of him, and it was at Chris's wedding, and he's like, no, that's probably the second best kiss I've had lately.
Yeah,
and it panned over to show
him and his reaction.
Duncan's character, and he's just
so
like,
funny. But it really captured the essence of like the relationship that, you know, these two had, and it was so good, so well done. I was very pleasantly surprised, and this is one that it's not going to make a ton at the box office. You can already tell. Like, when we went in the theater, there may have been 10 people in the theater, you know, which is unfortunate, because, you know, you've got a couple really good, you know, bigger name actors in this film, well known, and, you know, we didn't see much from this trailer wise before it, but I think, talking back to our earlier conversation, I think that did help enhance our enjoyment of the film, because we didn't do a ton of research on it. We didn't have any real connection to the story going in, and we just allowed it to be told, and they did a masterful job at it.
Yeah, and I was same as you, especially as they put the clock on the screen of saying, you know, it's been this long that he's been underwater, this long without oxygen. You do see yourself shifting, like, okay, is this going to be a tragic story? Like, do we not know exactly? But yeah, they hooked us, and yeah, it's a shame that it's probably not going to make a whole lot in theaters, but it deserves. Like, we think it's a really solid film. Last Breath is in theaters now. We highly recommend going and checking it out. It is a solid, well-acted, enjoyable film that keeps you in high tension, and it's well worth going and seeing. We hope it does better than we're expecting it to do, but it is a film that was high quality, and then we feel like it deserves to be watched. If you go and watch it, come to our YouTube comments, go to our Discord, our social media. Let us know what you thought about it, because, like I said, we were surprised about how much we enjoyed this, not because we thought it was going to be a bad film. We just didn't know anything about it. We barely saw anything on it, and I'm glad we were able to go see it.
Yeah, it was definitely one that we recommend enough. Please go see that movie and let us know what you think about it. I think it's a movie that a lot of people are going to sleep on, and I hope eventually, you know, enough people see it that it kind of gets the love and respect that we feel that it deserves. It's a surprise hit for me for this year so far. Like, we've been a little up and down on some of the movies we've seen. We've seen some really good ones. We've seen some less than stellar ones. You know which ones we're talking about if you go back in our archives and see how we talk about those films. But this one was very much needed after a couple weeks of some average to below average films. This one was a nice palate cleanser to get us back into some really good movies.
Yeah, agreed. So if you've watched the show or listened to the show at all lately, you know how much we love the Daredevil Netflix series and how excited we are for Daredevil Born Again to be coming out. That's, we're a few days away from the 2-episode premiere of that. We can't wait to see it. So we thought we would go back and revisit the Netflix series. And that, I think when it first came out, a lot of us were surprised that Marvel was having these characters, starting with Punisher, and you had Jessica Jones, you had Luke Cage, you had Iron Fist, and we also had the Defender series, that they did all this on Netflix. It was kind of surprising that that was a route that they decided to go, but you weren't exactly sure how it was going to be, because at that point, Netflix had some decent shows, but I don't think it was as well known for the high quality of their
television,
in-house made television and stuff, and Daredevil was still one of the most incredible shows that I've watched. It ran for 3 seasons. You also have to include the Defenders in it because that did play a part between season 2 and 3. Yep. Even though it was not as well received as, the main series of Daredevil. We also had the Punisher series and everything else. I don't want to leave that out because it was incredible. I think we got 1 or 2 seasons, 2 seasons of that. But it was really incredible what they did. They went dark, they went gritty, they went dramatic. We had humor, but it was something that Netflix took extremely seriously. The showrunners took extremely seriously. They were giving us the devil of Hell's Kitchen. They were giving us death and drama. We got graphic violence. We got arms and legs being broken. We got people being decapitated and everything else. Like, they went heavy, hard, full in. These were very mature, dark, incredible seasons that we got from Daredevil, and I'm really excited to see, now that we know that they were, originally going away from it with Born Again, going away from the Netflix series, that they've decided to come back and embrace it. We're already preparing, which we won't go into, we're preparing for something that we know is going to happen in the series that we don't like, but we're going to see exactly how it goes. But it was really incredible what they did with Daredevil on Netflix.
I'm ready to have my heart broken again when it comes to what we know is coming in the Born Again series. But already getting rave reviews from people who have seen it so far and just say it's absolutely masterful and could potentially be the MCU's best television property they've ever done, which is very exciting because I think they're including the original Netflix run in it, which is, from my opinion, one of my top 3 TV series of all time. I love that shit. And I don't say that lightly because if you know me, I watch a ton of stuff. But this stuff really resonated with me. So I kind of want to get into my background with not only the character, but how I have related to it, because he's one of the, if you don't know anything about Daredevil, who he is and what his abilities are, if you've never watched it, Daredevil is a character, but his alias is Daredevil, but he's Matt Murdock. So Matt Murdock is an up-and-coming attorney in New York City, in Hell's Kitchen, who, it always kind of, in a very Spider-Man-esque way, stands up for the little guy, right? He's kind of championing people who, can't really fight for themselves necessarily. But what makes Daredevil stand out among all of the other, quote-unquote superheroes is he's the first, you want to say, like, handicapped superhero, because he has this incredibly tragic accident as a kid where he gets chemical burns in his eyes and he loses his sight. Well, what happens when he loses his sight is all of his other senses get enhanced so much, and he learns through, rigorous training and things like that to really lean into his other senses, and he uses that to help fight crime. It's an incredible like origin story that he has, and they dive barely a little bit into it in the Netflix series, but where the Netflix series starts off is he's already, Matt Murdock, attorney, blind, kind of really just starting out his journey as the devil of Hell's Kitchen, Daredevil. So what you get is not the comic book Daredevil suit that, if you're fans of the comics, he's very much this black shirt, mask just above his nose, kind of, hero where, he's blinding him. He's blind, so he's covering his eyes anyway, but he starts off and he's fighting, some of this crime that he's hearing about. One of his best features is his ability to super hear. He has basically super hearing in this show, and it just kicks in such a hard way of him really starting to take on the Daredevil persona and, taking out this crime syndicate. And you go into the second episode of the first season in my opinion, one of the most ingenious fight sequences in the history of television that they've kind of made a staple in subsequent seasons, and I've heard that they're including it in the news.
Absolute infamous
as
now.
well. It's a one-shot fight sequence where he's kind of breaking up this human trafficking ring, and he just goes in and just beats the crap out of everybody. So he's
so brilliantly.
Very skilled hand-to-hand fighter, and you get some of that story with him throughout, how he got this training, who he got it from, and how he's this skilled hand-to-hand combat fighter who is still very much human. Like, he is, he's not indestructible by any means, and you see him kind of try to balance being the devil of Hell's Kitchen while also trying to get his attorney business going with his best friend Foggy, who is played incredibly by Eldon Henson, who, from the Mighty Ducks series and other things like that coming up, that, this is such a good show, man. I could break down every single episode of this, but we don't have time for that. But it's such a brilliant show.
Yeah, those one-shot action fight scenes were incredible, not only because of they gave us some brutal action, but it was also felt very realistic because they're getting tired towards the end because of how much they're fighting. But it's also the trickery, like especially like the hallway fight scene, the infamous hallway fight scene. You're breaking down doors and getting all the rooms as the camera slowly pans behind, but you're getting like the stunt double will come out and do something, and then they'll break through another door, and then you have Charlie Cox come back out and they fight, and then they just balance that back and forth to give them a little rest and a break, but it looks so seamlessly and good. That kid was just incredibly done, yeah. And you also had we talked about Jon Bernthal being perfect casting for the Punisher. Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk, as Kingpin, is just absolutely incredible. He's done some amazing things. Most people know him for Full Metal Jacket because of that disturbed, brief performance that he had in that movie and stuff. But he embodied everything of the Kingpin. You got to see the insecure little boy inside of the beastly man. You got to see him be incredibly vicious with beating people's heads in and murdering people. But you also get him, like, which is also I just rewatched season 1 and seeing him play with the cufflinks and just the way he spoke and the way, like, you see why people were fearful of him, but also question his leadership because he's not sure all the time what he's doing, but you get that balance of his anger and his hatred and the love with Vanessa and everything that played them, and their dynamic between each other was so brilliant, which I'm glad they brought her back as well, because originally they were recasting Vanessa to someone else, and after they stopped for Daredevil Born Again, and that they decided to bring her back as well, and that's just, they had such a great dynamic together as well. But Vincent was just incredible as Kingpin. Like, that's along with Jon Bernthal as Punisher and even Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock in Daredevil. Like, it was just, when you want to see a character that you've read and grown up with done right, I feel like Vincent D'Onofrio was just such a grand slam, home run, huge, incredibly just perfect casting to be Wilson Fisk.
Yeah, the casting in this show is immaculate, because even Deborah Ann Woll is Karen Page, who's kind of like the sort of love interest of Matt Murdock, kind of on again, off again kind of dynamic that they have throughout the entire series run as well. Like, such an iconic Daredevil character as well. But you want to go kind of season by season the way the show is laid out. So season 1 is all about, Matt's evolution into being the devil of Hell's Kitchen, to being this Daredevil character. You have this really a decent amount of mystery behind who's behind all of these things that are happening. And then you eventually get the reveal that it is Kingpin. But they do a good job of setting up so much of that mystery that I remember watching it, like, as it was happening, and everybody just kind of exploding when they discovered that the man behind all of this, and they finally say his name, and it's Wilson Fisk, and you're like, yes, we're getting the Kingpin, because going into it, you didn't really know who the main bad guy was and who was behind all of these things that are happening, and you finally get the reveal that it's Wilson Fisk, it's Kingpin, so you're like, yes, you get Daredevil and Kingpin, which is such an incredible dynamic between them. And fans of the comics know that Wilson Fisk's two main, heroes that he battles are Daredevil and Spider-Man. So you're getting one of those two in this, and you're getting that fight. And this is all about Matt trying to play the duality of being this attorney while also trying to be the Daredevil at night, and how one's affecting the other. Like, his getting beat up as Daredevil is really affecting his ability to be an effective attorney too. So you're seeing kind of a back and forth with his, desire to stop Wilson Fisk at all costs, while also trying to get his his partnership with Foggy off the ground, and keeping them in the dark about who is this devil of Hell's Kitchen, because they do a good job for most of the season of keeping that secret from the people that he loves. And obviously, if you know anything about superhero stories, they eventually find out. And
yeah, so there's a fantastic episode where Foggy finds out in season 1 of where he's like, do I even know you anymore? Like, we've known each other from college. We've gone through everything. I've been your wingman for women. I've been your best friend. We've been everything together, and you kept this from me. Like, you're out there killing people, or like it was great acting by both of them. Of course,
fantastic.
Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock is really beat up and bloodied because he just, they're trying to assassinate him. They're trying to take out the devil of Hell's Kitchen, who's trying to stop, Fisk's whole game plan of taking over the city and everything. And, Foggy's helping him, but he's laying on that emotion. Like, you're not the guy I thought I knew. And he sees the darker and negative part of it, but it also helps with Matt, who is struggling. There's religious undertones throughout Daredevil and stuff. He goes to confession. He's talking to,
very hardcore Catholic,
and everything, and trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. Like, he wants to do right. He has these kind of powers, which I still love, like, their explanation of how Daredevil can kind of see, because it kind of gets a slight vision based on the heightened senses and everything, that he describes it as the world on fire. So, like, everything that he's able to see is a world on fire. He can't see, but he can get outlines of things, but it just looks like everything is on fire, which, of course, helps with it being the devil of Hell's Kitchen and being Daredevil and stuff. But it just so brilliantly acted and done. But yeah, that whole first season being about establishing that relationship between Matt and Foggy and Karen and the attorney side, along with bringing Daredevil about, but also mixing in the beginning of the relationship with Wilson Fisk and going back and forth. Like, I still loved Matt went to Vanessa's art gallery and he's talking to her about art and everything and how to experience it as a blind person. And she's, being full in about it, about trying to explain stuff to him. And he's goes in, well, what about your man? Like, do you have a man? And how would he see it? And then Wilson shows up, and that's the first time they're in the same room together. And you get Matt is very tense and very like, I don't know what to do. And you get that dialogue back and forth because they're kind of suspicious of each other. And, Matt's trying to get out of there as quickly as possible. And Vesta's like, okay, what? Oh, I've got to think about the cost. Well, he never found out what the cost or anything was, but it was just great to see, like, he was actually scared. You had the Devils of Hell's Kitchen. Daredevil was, I'm face to face with the guy that I'm trying to take down. I don't know how to act right now. Yeah, and it was just great to show that extra dynamic of the character, that he doesn't always know. Like, a lot of these superheroes that are more grounded are trying to do the right thing, but they don't always know what the right thing is. And when they're putting a situation that they haven't planned for and they're looking for and they're putting in something like, oh, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, and it's just, you get this incredible story in season 1. One of the highlights from season 1 that you get the wonderful performance of Ben Urich, the character, as well, who's kind of like this major reporter who kind of starts to mentor Karen and her journalistic endeavors too. And he meets a very gruesome fate in this show, and it was an incredible story arc with him.
That was such a gut punch.
Throughout that first, like, him not making it to season 2 was a huge gut shot to everybody who watched it, because we really connected with that character too. But we do kind of end season 1 kind of preparing for the events of season 2, where you start to notice that this group that Matt's aware of, but kind of there's a more sinister group working on things, in the background too, that it's not just Wilson Fisk involved in these things. And you get exposition of that in season 1, but they really dive heavy into it in season 2. And so you kind of end season 1 with, Fisk getting arrested, getting put in jail, or trying to get put in jail, ultimately breaks out, but you get Matt in his full Daredevil outfit fighting Wilson Fisk. He winds up getting him put in prison finally. So that's where, season 2 really kicks off with Fisk in jail, but then you get the introduction of the Hand in more, a more heavier presence in this season, where you have his mentor, who's also blind, Stick, who's incredible in this in this season as well. But you get, Fisk kind of getting his way out of jail. You get the introduction of Frank Castle, of the Punisher.
Which plays a big part in season 2. Matt has to represent Frank, but, they square off because Frank doesn't do things by the book. He just kills people, and that great dynamic between those two.
You get the very anti-hero Punisher in this, where he was like, I'm not a bad person, but I am willing to do whatever it takes to stop bad people. Mm-hmm. Whereas Matt tries to deal with, the religious undertones of, is it the right thing to, like, kill someone who does bad things and do this? Because his thing is very much, I don't kill people. I'll beat the crap out of them and stop them.
I'll put them in trauma, but
I won't kill them. And then you got Frank taking that extra step, and then Matt having to represent Frank as his attorney, and the back and forth that they have too, and the dynamic between the two of them is incredible. And you get, Karen bonding with Frank Castle as well, and you have this whole long season with the Hand kind of infiltrating everything too, who's kind of the organization that Fisk is a part of, and you get this really, really elaborate, intense, like, fight for the heart of New York at this point, where the Hand is coming through to just take over everything. And it's not just Fisk. It's a whole organization behind Fisk, too. And it's really intense. You get the introduction of what is notorious to most people who have seen Daredevil in any other film representation that we've seen. You get the introduction of Elektra here, who is, obviously Matt's main love interest throughout his run in the comics. You get Elektra, who is played brilliantly by Elodie Yung in this season, and she is a stone cold killer, like assassin for the Hand, and ultimately you deal with this whole, the black, what's it called, the black whatever,
the black sky,
the black sky that they're is going to bring the Hand the success that they're wanting, and it's this unstoppable force, and you just get this back and forth where Matt's trying to not only do everything he's doing as Daredevil. He's trying to save the woman that he loves from meeting this, he thinks there's still good in her and he can redeem her. And it's a wild, wild, wild season for season 2.
Yeah, season 2 is probably one of, if not my favorite season of the show, just because of that dynamic between Matt and Frank and Wilson Fisk and everything because we get a fantastic scene where, Frank is actually sent to prison and he has to interact with Wilson Fisk, and they're, trying to get him to kill Fisk, or they're trying to get him to help Fisk. And there's a double, he turns on him, and
very
bloody prison fight. But probably one of my favorite, most memorable things from this series happened in season 2, and that's when Frank, because at that point when Frank is in court and he is being put on trial with Matt helping him, he's already had many interactions with Daredevil and conversation where he's trapped him on a roof and he's going to kill somebody. But it's that realization that you can see in Jon's eyes and Frank's eyes, that he recognizes the voice and he can finally tell that Matt is Daredevil, that he's been dealing with, like, oh, my lawyer is a guy that I've been going toe-to-toe with. Like, you just get that moment where he realizes, and it was just like a great moment. Like, he played so perfectly, like, oh, I know who this guy is. So like, good. I know his secret and everything. Yeah. But just the whole dynamic of that season with the Punisher story and mixing in with Daredevil and Fisk and Karen and Foggy and everything else like that. Like, there's just such a great dynamic that happened between them. Then you mix in the Hand and Elektra and everything else for extra damage. Which some people didn't fully care for the Hand's part of how they handled it. Like, I loved more of Frank's part in that part of the series more than the Hand, but there was just some great scenes. Another, great single shot fight scene, as we talked about, and everything, and Frank in the prison and all that. It was so well done that they gave you that dynamic leading up to, getting our Punisher series and everything else. And it was just, the second season was really well done that we got, but we also added, ended with more tragedy because we did get Elektra dying. But if you know the character, it's not always as it seems when that happens, or if you've watched the Ben Affleck Daredevil and Jennifer Garner Elektra films, if you're a fan of that electric nachos, as many will refer to it as she said, because it's Elektra nachos. She's supposed to be Greek, but it sounded like Jennifer Garner said electric nachos at one point in the first movie like that. And which I did love seeing Jennifer Garner come back in Deadpool and Wolverine. and have those jokes. But I just really love that dynamic, as we talked about a love for Jon Bernthal. That dynamic between Frank Castle and Matt Murdock in season 2 was just
amazing.
It was so good.
It was fantastic, and you get obviously the main stuff with the Punisher, but like I said, the hand stuff, like it leads into the Defenders series too, because you get other the other characters in the series, especially like Iron Fist, who's well aware of the hand and trying to stop them. You get that integration into the Defenders series, but season 2 does end on that emotional cliffhanger of Karen finally realizing that that Matt is Daredevil too, and that plays in a very heavy part into the events of season 3 as well. But season 2 leading into the Defenders series, which the end of the Defenders series kind of leads us into where we're at in season 3. So to touch briefly on the Defenders, in the Defenders is obviously the grouping of Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Daredevil, trying to put an end to the hand once and for all. So obviously in the Defender series, they're pretty much successful at doing so, stopping the hand completely. And it ends with this very over-the-top dramatic, basically a whole building coming down, what appears to be coming down on Daredevil and Elektra, where Daredevil's making one last-ditch effort to save Elektra, realizing that she's not going to be savable at this point. And what appears to be the death of the Devil of Hell's Kitchen at the end of the Defenders series, where you come to find out in the after credit scene, it's leading into Daredevil season 3, where he winds up waking up completely broken in the hospital well, not at the hospital, in the care of the nuns in the medical wing of this church that he used to go to, and the church that he attends, and they know his secret, so they're kind of taking care of him. You get the real, the revelation that one of the nuns that's taking care of him is his estranged mother that he didn't know was still alive and still around. So you get a lot of the fun dynamics of that. But moving into season 3, you get his, coming back to being the Devil of Hell's Kitchen again, whereas he was this completely broken man. He's basically given up on being Matt Murdock at this point. He's like, I can't do both. If I'm going to do both, I'm going to be the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. The work I'm going to do there is more important than any work I could do as Matt Murdock. And he has that, that back and forth with himself, kind of abandoning Foggy and Karen at this point.
He doesn't tell him. He's been missing for 4 months, and he doesn't tell him he's still alive.
That he's alive, and they've already mourned him, and they're trying to move on. And then there's this really cool interpersonal dynamic there. But you also get, this culmination with Wilson Fisk trying to run for mayor of New York, and, Daredevil going all out at this point to stop him. You get the introduction of an incredibly well-acted and well-performed Bullseye character I'm so glad to see that he's going to be making some kind of an appearance in Daredevil Born Again too.
I just think of that introduction scene of where Bullseye first puts on becoming the fake Daredevil, and you get to see him like that was just an incredible sequence that they put together.
Yeah, it was just so good. But you get this full-on conspiracy type season in season 3 where it's, corruption at all levels, and how far does Fisk's corruption in the police department and everything go. You really get that full out in this season where he's doing whatever it takes to get into that mayor's seat, and he gets pretty freaking close by the end of it, because very publicly he's this altruistic, I'm the good guy kind of thing, even though I've been painted as a bad guy. It's a really fun season that they really still ended it on a high note, in my opinion.
Even got, of course, with Karen and Foggy learning that Matt was alive and stuff, we got some more dynamics with her where she ends up killing Wesley, who was the right-hand man of Fisk all throughout of that, who's been responsible for a lot of the torture and torment and stuff she's gone through, because he's the one who carries out most of Fisk's demands and stuff. And it was a very powerful scene where she ends up killing Wesley, and then you have the scenes toward the end where they're trying to get Fisk to confess to everything so they can finally get him and put him away or kill him, as Matt is really fighting with again. Like, can I allow Fisk to still be alive, or can we get through with getting him arrested, and we get Karen calling him out and getting, confessing that she killed Wesley so she can get his anger and get him off kilter, so he'll confess and stuff. And there was some really dynamic, powerful scenes with her, and with her dealing with that fallout of Matt finally confessed that he's Daredevil, but then the Defenders happen, he goes missing, they think he's dead, and he comes back but doesn't want to tell any of them that he's alive. And there's a lot of mixed, deep emotion that happens in season 3 between,
it's heavy,
like even like Matt, the first time he comes back as Daredevil, he's beaten by I think it was the hand that he faced off against, or remnants of the Yakuza or something like that. And he loses and he begs for death. Like he just, all right, everyone thinks I'm dead. I'd rather be dead, but they don't kill him. And he slowly makes his way back into everything. And it was just an incredible emotional season that they're trying to deal with. Fisk has gotten to the point where he's becoming the kingpin even more. Like he's becoming more ruthless, and he's showing how many connections in the FBI that he has under his wing. And we get that he's trying to, wants to marry Vanessa in this season, and the dynamic that plays out with him and Vanessa's relationship in the end here. And we just get a great dynamic. It ended up being the final season. I don't know if it was planned to be the final season, because we were all holding out hope that there was going to be 4, 5, 6 seasons, but only got 3 in the end. And because I was at that weirdness that every single one of the shows just got canceled.
They got the legs cut out from under them, right? Especially when a couple of those series were really starting to hit their stride. I know
Iron Fist was finally getting to where it needed to be.
Yeah, that one was. I think that was where the Defenders kind of redeemed Iron Fist from season 1 in a lot of people's eyes, and season 2 wound up being significantly better. And they had some exciting stuff going on in season 3, but we're not talking about Iron Fist here. But Daredevil ended on kind of a high note here too, where he finally comes back to really. You get the resolution with Fisk, or what we think is the resolution with Fisk, and he's like, okay, I can come back and I can be the Matt Murdock that I need to be too. I think I can get that balance that I need to have to not only be the most effective version of the Devil of Hell's Kitchen that I could be, but also the most effective version of Matt Murdock that I can be, the attorney who's also very gifted and brilliant as a defense attorney. And you get the iconic Nelson Murdock and Page, insignia and stuff like that for the end of it, and you're like, okay, we're ready to go. And then Netflix cuts the legs out from under us, and we didn't get a continuation of that. So that leads us to where we're at now with Daredevil Born Again, and I'm interested to see where specifically they pick up the ball.
So I think it's supposed to be 4 to 5 years later after season 3.
We're getting a bit of a time jump, obviously, because it's been several years since this show has aired originally, but it's one of those shows, man, that if you go back and watch it now it still holds up so brilliantly well.
Yeah. I just finished season 1 again, and it is as good as I remember it back then.
It really has a high rewatchability. It's so good. It's got everything you want in a comic book series. It's got emotional depth. It's got incredible action. It's dark. It's violent, but it has levity. It has humor.
Heart and humor. Yeah.
It has a blend of anything you could want in a show that is so brilliantly written. The performances in it are all incredible across the board. Charlie Cox is brilliant. He's a complete revelation in Daredevil as Daredevil. Eldon Henson as Foggy is incredible. Jon Bernthal as Punisher is incredible. Vincent D'Onofrio is incredible as
Not to mention that I want to jump in real quick on Charlie Cox. He is not American. I mean, you would never know that with this, because some of them you can tell or know, but like I wasn't really that full aware of him as an actor before Daredevil. And so when watched season 1 and saw how incredible it was, and you see him do an interview in his natural accent, it's like, oh,
jarring.
Okay.
Yeah. And I got the pleasure to meet him a little over a year ago at a convention. Couldn't be nicer, couldn't be more appreciative of his fans, and the line for him was insanely long. It just goes to show how popular the show is, and everybody's rejoicing at the fact that we're getting new Daredevil content, and it's going to be in the same vein as the Netflix show that was so incredible that we just talked about. Like, they're leaning into the TVMA, thank God, because we're not getting a watered-down Disney-fied Daredevil, which I know was everybody's concern when they announced this project, and it kind of feels like we were maybe going to get that for a moment, until they finally decided to change course on it. I'm so glad. I would love eventually if they were to do it, like a special thing to put together of the footage that they had shot and the story they were originally trying to tell.
Well, some of it is
it's going to be integrated.
They integrated some of it into this season, but it'll be interesting to see what the stuff they cut was, because the rumor lately that they're talked about more, and I think it was an actor, a production assistant, or someone who spoke about it saying it was a comedy. That when they first restarted Daredevil Born Again, they were making it more of a comedy.
Well, yeah, because if you talk about like the introduction that he had back into the MCU, obviously he had a minor cameo in No Way Home where he catches the brick, and he's a really good lawyer. So it made my heart so happy to see him on in that. But
and with Spider-Man, like we've been craving to see. I mean, he was with Peter Parker, but
still
to see him
those
with
two on
Spider-Man,
screen together when they have so much depth of comic book story to dig into between those two characters is great. But then you have him in She-Hulk, which was very much not the Daredevil that we remember, right? So it's more of you get the yellow-brown...
ketchup and mustard suit,
the yellow-brown costume that he wore, which is kind of a one-off throwaway from an old comic. Not that it's not a comic book accurate suit, but you have him as very much more of a one-night stand with She-Hulk kind of thing. And it was kind of... It was funny in a vacuum, but it's not what you expect to portray Daredevil as. But then you get him in Echo, which is more of the Netflix-style Daredevil that we were hoping to see.
Great fight sequence.
Just incredible fight scene between Daredevil and Echo. If you haven't gone back and watched Echo, go give it a shot. It's really good. You can go back in our archives and see what we thought about the show. But Daredevil does make a cameo appearance in that.
And so does Kingpin.
Kingpin shows up. Back. Obviously, Kingpin's very heavy into Echo and her backstory.
Well, Hawkeye, I think Hawkeye was the first cameo by Kingpin,
Correct.
And then he played a bigger importance in Echo.
Correct. And you get, because Hawkeye was the reintroduction of Wilson Fisk in there, and it was Vincent D'Onofrio, and everybody lost their minds again. We're just like, yes, it's actually happening.
He was wearing the big Hawaiian shirt and stuff in it.
But with Daredevil specifically, you get him back in Echo, an awesome fight sequence with that, where you get to really see him full on I'm Daredevil, in all his full splendor. So I'm excited to see where they take that and move it forward now, because the way Echo left off is kind of where I think we're jumping in with Daredevil Born Again, and it's Wilson Fisk again making a run at kind of running New York and becoming mayor again and kind of getting back into that ilk.
It's totally not realistic that a criminal could become...
Never. Not in any
politics,
position of political power or anything, but...
We'll leave that there.
Yeah, we'll definitely leave that there. Send all your hate mail to Brad Covey at we'llbringthepopcorn.com. But I'm so pumped and so excited to see where they take this. We're only a couple days away now from the time of this recording to getting those episodes, and I'm excited to talk about it. We're going to go on that journey here on the podcast where we're talking about it, and I'm excited that we're finally getting new Daredevil content in 2025. We've been talking about it ever since this show started, and this podcast. We've been looking forward to this, and it's finally here, and I'm so excited. Yeah.
And I really love how Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox have been about the show. They absolutely loved doing the show, and there was big fan movements of trying to get it back, and they were all a part of it and backing it and talking with fans about it, and they, as far as we know, were instrumental as well about getting the changes done when Daredevil Born Again started, because they didn't care for the direction they were going. They didn't feel it was right, the changes and what they were making, and they were instrumental helping it. They care about these characters and these roles as much as the fans do, and it's been great to see. And even Charlie Cox has said, I will play Daredevil until he was a series for Daredevil just came out where he's in his 60s and old and gray and stuff. I've got some time that I can keep playing him because we got storylines to go. He will play him as long as Marvel will keep allowing him to play it. He's asking to be in Doomsday. He's asking to be in Secret Wars. He's
until you're 90.
Until just him and Hugh Jackman as skeletons.
Why not? Just give that to us in all shapes and forms. But one of the things that I'm really excited about is not only now season 1 is getting ready to come out, they're just getting ready to start shooting season 2.
Yep.
That's getting ready to start filming. I'm so pumped about that because once they get through all this press junket for the release of the show that they've been on, they're heading pretty much directly back out and starting the filming of season 2, which
is down to 8 episodes now. It's supposed to be 9, but now apparently we're being told it's only 8 for the second season.
And I'm fine with that if it's a more compact and harder hitting story. I'm excited for that run, and hopefully that's not the end of it for them. And I'd love to see them, but we know how Disney Plus is notorious for giving things really only one season. It goes to show how much faith they have in Daredevil that they're giving it 2 already.
They're talking 3, 4, or more. It could go on for a while.
Give me all the Daredevil. I'm excited.
But Kristen Ritter, you you got to stop teasing us, though, because a day before shooting started for Daredevil Born Again, she put up an Instagram post showing herself in New York where they're filming and everything else and wearing Marvel's. You know, she's showing workout videos of her wearing Daredevil or Jessica Jones or Marvel shirts and stuff. Like, she has been another one who's been adamant, like, if Marvel asks me to come back as Jessica Jones, I will come back. And I love the Jessica Jones series. I really want to see her return as Jessica Jones. And she's given some more hints that maybe we'll see her in season 2 here. Hopefully we do. I would love to see that. But it's going to be real interesting to see if we do get others from that. They are embracing the Netflix, you know, universe as being part of the MCU now. But Luke Cage wasn't as well received. Iron Fist was the least well received out of all of them. There's been talks of them recasting. Hopefully it's bringing her into, I'm forgetting the character's name, with Iron Fist. The main female along with him, Colleen, that potentially you could bring that actress back and have everything be passed over to her and have a female Iron Fist. But so you still have the continuity between the Netflix series, but bringing it back, I would be all for it. She was fantastic. She had some great action sequences, a good actor, but it's going to be interesting to see if we do get Jessica Jones to come back, if we end up getting the same Luke Cage, if we get the same Iron Fist, or we get some changes, because we're in that weird in-between. This is, we're getting up to Doomsday and Secret Wars, which is going to change a lot of stuff, and we're going to get a lot of new characters and old characters coming back, and we're in that kind of interesting in-between of who and who aren't we going to see in the next several years as these big team-ups, and we start heading into the mutant saga of how these are going to really play out going forward in the MCU.
Yeah, if it's going to happen, it's got to happen now, and it's got to happen soon, so I'm excited for Daredevil Born Again. I'm excited to talk about it when we finally get the content out. The first 2 episodes are dropping this week, and excited to see what the future of Daredevil in the MCU holds. I'm glad that they're embracing the popularity of the Netflix show, because it was insanely popular. There was a lot of very, obviously ourselves included, a lot of unhappy people when they cut the legs, at least under Daredevil, because as much as people like the other 3 shows, really, and including The Punisher, if you want to include that in there, Daredevil was insanely popular.
Huge
for Netflix. I'm talking Stranger Things level popular for Netflix. You know, Wednesday popular. Like, it was on that level of viewability and had as big of a following as their shows. So the fact that Disney's embracing that, I think, is a smart move on their part. And I would love to see, you know, this last for several more years. Like you said, give Charlie Cox the Daredevil mantle until he's ready to not have it anymore. Like, I'm all in on I'm all in on him as this character. He's done such an incredible job, and I hope that, you know, this is just the beginning for him in the MCU.
Can we get the DD on his chest at some point before Charlie Cox is done, just to see Daredevil with the DD and just get all that in there? Because, you know, there's been a little kind of, the first helmet he got didn't really, I think Charlie Cox wasn't a fan either, didn't fit as well, and they altered and changed the helmet as the years went on, and we've already seen in Daredevil Born Again in one of the clips that we have different variations and different looks at all the different helmets and stuff. But I'm really intrigued to see, like, we know a little bit of the story going in, but they're keeping most everybody blind on exactly what's going on in Daredevil Born Again, which is great. Like, let me experience it as a whole and not have stuff ruined, because we're not going to go into it. There's already one thing, if you're a huge fan of the Netflix series and Daredevil and you've been keeping tabs on this, that we know there's going to be something that happens that a lot of people are going to be upset about. But we're really interested to see how that affects the story and affects everything going forward. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Daredevil Born Again. We're just a few days away. If you have not seen any of the Netflix Marvel shows with Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Punisher, and of course Daredevil, they are all on Disney Plus now. So you can watch them on Disney Plus in their full glory. They're not edited down at all. You can watch all of it on Disney Plus. You do have to add that age restriction onto your account where you have to put in a passcode to be able to watch them. If you have kids accounts, or turn, you know, that off. I have to, because I have kids accounts on there with my kids but go watch them. They are well worth a watch, especially Daredevil and Punisher and even Jessica Jones. All of those are so well worth watching. They were absolutely incredible. I would give the Daredevil series on Netflix a 10. Like, perfect. All seasons. Yeah. Like, even though they had their issues here and there with a few things, overall, I think through three seasons, Daredevil on Netflix was just a fantastic series that I absolutely loved. It stands up so well, and it's one of the best series of a comic book, one of the best things comic book made of all time through anything. Like, it'll stand up to just about anything.
It's brilliant, and if I'm listing it in my top 3 of all time TV shows, I can't not give it a 10, right? It's so incredible, so well done. The writing is amazing. The performances are awesome. The violence is on point where it needs to be. It is unapologetically violent. It is dark. It is gritty. It has its heart. It has its humor. It has a little bit of everything you want in a show, like I've said. And just, can I get these first 2 episodes for the love of God? I've already told you kind of tongue-in-cheek, but not really. I'm going to tear up a little bit when the show comes back because I never thought I'd get these guys on my screen again, and I was so emotionally invested in the show that I'm going to be emotional watching.
I think a lot of people are going to tear up for several different reasons.
Going to be. And one of the things I'm really looking the most forward to, aside from what we pretty much know is coming for one of the characters that we're emotionally attached to, I've heard the season finale for this season is absolutely bonkers. Crazy, insane season finale. Like, the words that I saw were, I don't know how Marvel pulled this off, was kind of the words that I heard thrown.
Because they've talked about episodes 1 through 6 and how they're dropping that. We're getting 1 and 2 together, and then 3 or 4 would be on their own, and then 5 or 6 would be together. But 7 through 9, they haven't talked about.
Correct.
They haven't given us any idea of how that's going to, are we going to get any doubled up, or they're going to be weekly? They haven't spoken on those last 3. And we are looking like, I think there's one short episode that's around 30 minutes, but most of the episodes are going to be around an hour. So we're going to get some quality content. But yeah, from the few reviews that have gotten their hands on the full season, it does sound like we're in for a treat, and we cannot be more excited about diving in and getting into Daredevil Born Again. But if you watched Daredevil on Netflix, let us know your opinions on it. Come to our Discord, come to our comments, come to our socials, however you can reach us. We want to talk about it. Like, it's 2018 was when the final season aired, I believe, and we're still talking about, even if Born Again wasn't about to come around the corner, I would be revisiting and talking about this series.
I still talk about it with people to this day. Like, I had a buddy, my buddy Alex, and I were just having this conversation the other day with the show coming back up, and we're just talking about how much we loved what happened in this show, and it's so exciting to get that back to it. I'm excited to dive in.
But yeah, we're just a few days away. Daredevil Born Again, just 2 days after we drop this, or 1 day after we drop this episode
drops, yes.
At 9 p.m. Eastern time. So it's dropping late at night. You're going to get the first 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again on March 4th, and we cannot wait for that.
You will not be able to reach me between the hours of 9 and 11 on Tuesday. It's not gonna happen.
I'll just come over and bang on his house door, and he will not answer.
I will not answer. I will have the volume turned up so loud I can't hear the knocking. Just calling it out now. I am not the friend to call during those times. If you need something, sorry. Like, I'll hit you up afterwards. But
just don't bother Josh on March 4th. Just leave him alone.
Leave me alone.
So coming up this week, even though we've already talked about it a little bit, we're going to start off with our theatrical releases. So we have probably one of the more interesting films that we've heard about for a while now. It's been delayed a few times, but we're getting Mickey 17. So this is Robert Pattinson is playing a guy who's, I guess, kind of down on his luck, and he decides to become an expendable. An expendable is a guy who is killed over and over again to run different research and other things on, I assume, a foreign planet. It's a sci-fi film, so he gets to die over and over again in different gruesome ways. We have Stephen Yeun a part of it. We have a decently stacked cast with it. Mark Ruffalo. It looks like it's going to be fun, but it looks like a very quirky sci-fi film. Of course, Mickey 17 refers to, something big and dramatic happens when they get to the 17th iteration of his rebirth. Like, they've created a machine that can just, remake every person after they've died, and they get rid of them in different ways. And like, it's definitely going to be really quirky, because in the trailer, one's like they're throwing his dead body to disintegrate, and like, all right, we'll see you tomorrow. Like, talking to the dead body like that. It looks bonkers. It looks like it's going to be bonkers, but hopefully that means it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that one and talking about it too, because I know I've told you, like, it's either going to be really fun, quirky, and we're going to like it, or we're going to hate it. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think there's going to be like a middle ground there. So if you come back next week and see what we think about it.
We also have one that it looked like it could be fun, but it's another one that's just flying under the radar. There's been one trailer release. There's been no marketing for it, and that's In the Lost Land. So this is a Paul W. Anderson film starring Mila Jovovich, Dave Bautista. It's a apocalyptic kind of sci-fi action film. I don't even know how to describe it because I've barely seen anything on it, but it's coming out this week and it's going up against Robert Pattinson. It's probably not going to do as well in theaters. I'm interested to check it out. Probably won't get a chance until it comes out on demand or something. And with how everything's happening, that'll be about in 2 weeks, but it's one that's just like, okay, we announce a film, like 3 weeks later, it's out.
Can I be honest with you? I think I've seen the trailer, but I couldn't tell you a thing that
I was trying to think about, like, I know I've seen the trailer, but then I could not describe what happens in the trailer. That's where I was like, wait, I don't remember what happened in the trailer.
Not a good omen for your film, but I love Dave Bautista and Mila Jovovich, so I'll definitely give it a watch and check it out for sure, but couldn't tell you a thing about it.
The last film this week is for the wrestling fans. So this one, again, I've seen the trailer online, but I haven't really seen it in front of any films or anywhere else. It's Queen of the Ring. This is based on the true story of wrestler Mildred Burke. It stars Emily Bett Rickards, who, if you watch the Flash show on the CW, you know of her. It's also got several other kind of big names in it as well. It seems like it's going to be real interesting. It looks like she got herself into some really good shape and took it very seriously to portray these women wrestlers and telling this true story.
Yeah, so this is like the early days, the early 1900s for women's wrestling before. Obviously now, if you watch wrestling, women's wrestling is, in some cases, the main focus of a lot of shows, right? So this wasn't always the case. This wasn't even the case 5-10 years ago so much. Like, you've seen a real explosion in popularity of, women's wrestling in the last, 5 to 10 years. But even before that, was very few and far between the opportunities that women got outside of, being sexualized for, a good chunk of the late 90s into the 2000s. But you're going all the way back to, early 1900s, early to mid 1900s with Mildred Burke. And this incredible story of like one of the first real breakthrough must-see female wrestlers of all time. And you get in this film, a lot of current female wrestlers have lent themselves to this movie. So if you're a fan of, WWE or AEW, probably more AEW than WWE, you'll notice some of the women that are appearing in this film. I know their current women's champion, Toni Storm, is one of the wrestlers in this movie. So if you're a fan of wrestling, go check this out. If you're not, it's still a very fascinating story about all the things that she had to go through as a female wrestler in that time. A very interesting period timepiece that I'm excited to check out for sure.
Yeah, so over on the TV side, we have something we haven't talked about at all. We're not looking forward to in the slightest. Daredevil Born Again, Season 1.
Who? What?
But no, yeah, what we've spent probably 40 minutes talking about the Netflix series, Born Again is here this week. Tuesday, March 4th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You can watch the very first 2 episodes of this brand new Daredevil series.
Not excited in the slightest. I might make a few minutes to check it out. I cannot freaking wait for this show. Thank God it's finally here.
And another one for the wrestling fans, we have WWE Evolve. So WWE took over this other independent wrestling that they're rebooting and bringing back on Tubi on March 5th. You have the premiere of WWE Evolve.
Yeah, it's interesting that they're putting this on a network like Tubi. Evolve was a fairly popular independent wrestling company that a lot of people who wrestle on WWE TV currently went through and wrestled for at some point. They're shooting this. They shot a bunch of episodes of this kind of, I don't want to call it guerrilla style, but in more of like a not full arena type of wrestling show where they're like they shot a bunch of stuff at their performance center and calling it like Evolve in an actual TV show where you get to see kind of a few of these like WWE ID wrestlers who are like independent development is what it's called, WWE independent development. So these independent wrestlers who now have the opportunity to sign these contracts to eventually lead their way into working for WWE. So it's kind of like a development for the development kind of thing. It's like, think about it like single and double A baseball when you're working your way up to the majors. It's kind of that. You're not really, they might throw some names in there that just to get people's eyes on it, but it's going to heavily showcase people who you've probably never heard of. But this is your kind of like an opportunity to get on the ground floor with them before they become potentially household names a couple years from now.
Yep.
But it's needed and it's fun and it's something that, you need Tubi to watch. So I don't know how many eyes are going to ultimately wind up on it, but if you know anything about the following that WWE has, I think it'll do just fine getting enough people to watch it to be sustainable on that network for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much, especially being on Tubi, that not a lot of people, like, I don't know if I've really ever watched anything on Tubi myself, past the hardcore wrestling fans, how many new fans they get to come over to Tubi to watch this show.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting case study to watch for sure. But that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thanks for indulging us while we talk about, the film that we watched, but also our love for Netflix's Daredevil that took up a lot more bandwidth and time than I think even we were anticipating this week. It's kind of a longer episode, so if you made it to this point, thank you so much for sticking with us. Coming up next week, we are going to be reviewing the Robert Pattinson film Mickey 17, as well as, yes, finally, the first 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again. So excited to check that out and get a chance to talk about it next week, finally, with some new content to talk about. But until then, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next week.